Good afternoon. I would like to call to order the Pasco County Board of Commissioners Legislative Agenda Workshop of August 24th, 2023. At this time, please silence all electronic devices. Please rise for the invocation and pledge.
O merciful Creator, your hand is open wide to satisfy the needs of every living creature. Make us thankful for your loving providence and grant that we, remembering the account that we must one day give, may be faithful stewards of your good gifts. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
District 1, Commissioner Ron Oakley.
Here.
District 2, Commissioner Seth Waitman. District 3, Commissioner Catherine Starkey. District 4, Commissioner Gary Bradford. District 5, Chairman Jack Mariano.
Here. And Commissioner Bradford is not able to attend. Commissioner Waitman, his family just had a baby boy last night. So priorities first. We wish that him and Jessica well. And Catherine is on her way. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this year's Legislative Agenda Workshop. We have pressing challenges and opportunities ahead, so I encourage you all to actively participate, share your perspectives, and engage in constructive discussions. Through our collaboration and exchange of insights, we can identify the most effective pathways forward. Let's make the most of this opportunity to drive the positive change for our community. A special thanks to the staff and more for organizing this event. This is a new format for us, and Mr. Carbell, I want to thank you. I know that years after year we go up to Tallahassee, we're kind of like running from spot to spot to spot, and I think this year we're going to get set up better by having this pre-meeting to go through a few different things that are out there, talk it through, and then as we progress further, we'll be able to talk to our legislative delegation a little bit better, and hopefully have even better results than we have been at. So thank you for setting this up.
Well, thank you. All credit to the team for getting this going for us, and we are excited, and I think we've got a great lineup to kind of prime the pump, if you will, to have some good discussion on what should be our priorities as one Pasco County going forward with the legislature. So I'll turn it over here to Chief of Staff Joanna Cheshire.
Okay.
Thank
Joanna.
you. Good afternoon. Joanna Cheshire, Chief of Staff, County Administration. Welcome to what I believe to be the first workshop of this kind, designed to foster collaborative discussion and set some direction. This is one step in our legislative efforts, making them more collaborative and strategic, like you just said. We're going to be a little bit more communicative, communicate more and have a strategy, but also know that there is some level of running around during legislative session and keeping track of things and kind of pivoting on quick notice. We do look forward to engaging our cities, our constitutional offices, and our state delegation, and each other as we go forward for a better Pasco. Today, we'll hear some legislative session predictions from Sean Foster of Sunrise Consulting Group and Ralph Lair, Pasco County Intergovernmental Affairs Officer. We'll present a brief overview and discuss each legislative proposal submitted by the team in your packets and share topics that are important to you all. This includes both policy and appropriations. The intended outcome of the workshop is to agree upon 3 to 5 legislative priorities, which will be on the September 5th regular board agenda for your approval as our official legislative platform. I respectfully ask that you keep the following in mind. The proposals you'll hear today are conceptual. With your direction, we'll refine the topics you wish to continue to pursue. Also, issues specific to Pasco make up a great legislative platform. There are, at the end of your packet, there are a few things from Florida Sports Coast as well as libraries that are great to note and to consider, but maybe not the best for our platform for Pasco because they align with their associations. It's kind of like a broad support or oppose, so we can still consider those things without it being part of our official platform. Just because we agree that a topic is important doesn't mean that it has to be on the platform. The legislative process is very nuanced. We can push an issue by seeking opportunities to amend language of germane bills or support organizations with similar intentions, like the Florida Association of Counties. Another nuance to consider is the appetite of the legislature. It's prudent of us to pursue issues that are viable and have a likelihood of success. Every year is an opportunity to build. You may hear an idea today that is better suited for the 2025 legislative session, so just keep that in mind. Your dedication to this process underscores your commitment to effective governance, so thank you, and I now welcome Sean and Ralph to get us started.
Thank you, appreciate that. Good afternoon, Ralph Flair. I'm the Intergovernmental Affairs Officer, and we have our contract lobbyist with us today, Sean Foster from Sunrise Consulting Group. I always appreciate the work that his team does for us. So I thought we would start off and we would talk about what we predict. Nothing has been said yet. There have been a couple of discussions with the media, with the top leadership, the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House on issues that they may want to tackle this year. But other than that, that's really been about it. But, you know, there's just some things that we know ultimately come down from Tallahassee every year. So I'll let you start off there.
Absolutely. Actually, you know, Ralph and I were already having conversations about it, and the first one I'm going to mention, no one's going to be surprised, is the word inflation. That's going to, you know, somebody said, really, is that going to be the top issue? Yes, inflation is directing right now a whole change of course of how we have paid for schools, colleges, roads, and everything else. Those costs have gone up increasingly numbers. I have a revenue estimating report that I'll give you here in just a few moments, too. Hurricane recovery. Are we out of the hurricane recovery? We're not. We're just in the beginning stages. Just pray right now we don't get hit by another hurricane of any such magnitude of what has hit us in the past couple of years. But I'll say one of the biggest issues that I have heard, and I have been in legislative meetings in the past 2 weeks in Tampa and down in Miami with leadership, and healthcare is going to be a huge issue. In what manner? Healthcare all over. Healthcare takes up such a huge amount of our budget. It is unbelievable. And that takes from how do we control Medicaid and the different costs coming through there, because we know of other needs that we're having. The older people are getting, the more need of our health care.
I was going to stop you on that
Yeah.
one. I don't know if they'll go right into Medicaid. That's always a tough issue to tackle. But I do know they're talking about reciprocity. I know that's always been an issue that we've discussed in the past, where we bring in healthcare providers, doctors, nurses from other states, and make it a little easier for them with their licensure when they come in here, which, I mean, that's what the rest of the state is doing, and it's good to see that Florida's, you know, jumping on that bandwagon. Any way to curb the cost and help the citizens of Florida.
Absolutely. On top of that, also, car insurance, and people have said it's crazy you don't say homeowners insurance. Well,
Can I back up on the medical thing?
Sure, of course.
Isn't part of the problem with the medical is the insurance that the medical people have to carry due to lawsuits and?
correct. That could be one of them. I mean, but that's not a direct cost to the state. They're looking at several, yes, what are businesses being implicated by the insurance that they have to have, but also how can they rein in some of the costs that are impacting the state of Florida when it concerns with healthcare. And I hate to go back to inflation, but it also is based somewhat on inflation. You know, the cost of procedures, that is the same cost to put, you know, tiles, roof tiles on your house have increased costs in healthcare and hospitals also. So, Commissioner, you are correct. Those are some of the provisions I would expect them to look at. As you know, they went really after those type of fees for attorneys when it came to roofs, you know, last year and other items. We can talk about a little bit of that issue. I wanted to talk to Commissioner Mariano at the end, but a little bit of the issues when it came to homeowners insurance. I do want to give you a quote from Senator Pasadomo. She said, let some of the policy that we pass actually have time to have an impact, because if not, there will be hell to pay. That was literally what her message was to insurance companies. But the thing that they're going to be tackling next, if you haven't seen your car insurance bill recently, wait for your next car insurance bill to come up.
I think Mike experienced that.
Mike, did you see a 30%?
I don't know,
At
I
least-
can buy a new car every year.
You know, and I'll say for everybody in the audience, you know, it is going to be impacting every single person that drives a car. And the car insurance is something that I have been told that they're going to take up. You know, kind of funny, but you know, when you asked me what's going to impact session, you and I were talking earlier, Ralph, I would say the presidential election is going to continue to impact it, meaning is our immigration issue is going to continue to be an issue and how they tackle that. Considering that it's an election year, we'll see probably good, healthy tax breaks as we did this year. For you all, I've already heard about a bill that's going to be filed concerning FRS and re-implementing the 1.5% COLA that was taken out several years ago. And that would have a, you know, talking about actuarial studies, I hate saying that word, and how that impacts you all in the future. And lastly, all jokes aside, the Live Local Act, and I'd like to, after I do all this, maybe spend some time talking about the Live Local Act. And I also challenge everybody here, Google Live Local Act Florida, Google affordable housing Florida, and it was the issue blew me away. This is not a Tampa issue. This is a Miami issue. This was an Orlando issue. I saw articles for probably 15 to 20 just in the past 3 days that popped up when I hit news on Google. I'm going to promise you, the legislators are hearing about the Live Local Act. They're hearing about affordable housing, and some are afraid to touch it. I asked a panel last week in Tampa that consisted of 1 state senator and 2 state reps. One of them was from our county. Have you heard from folks in your area? One of them was Brad Yeager on that panel, and I said, I wasn't going to throw him a softball, but have you heard from constituents and your elected officials about the Live Local Act and how it's impacting them? And both the House members sat back, and the senator that was there said, I'm not going to answer that question with a tongue-in-cheek, because he knew that was his Senate president's. But all jokes aside with that, I can assure you, I really want you to Google it. You'll see it. It is unbelievable how many newspaper articles are popping up and how it's negatively impacting communities.
If we could stand there for a minute.
Go for it.
We have like public hearings about zoning changes, land use changes, and sometimes going for multifamily. And the number one topic that we discuss is the Live Local Act. The legislation proposals that we put in there from Jeff and David to kind of protect us from that, getting people to sign up before we make a change, that they're not going to take commercial industrial land and switch it to affordable housing. It happens every single conversation.
Right.
And we still have other people outside applying in. So it is a big deal that a county that's, I'll say, past 20 years or so, we have focused on creating jobs in this county. And we're going to take the very land that we want to create jobs with, where people can work local, and take it away where they could put affordable housing in there. It's crazy. And the other provisions in there where they don't have to pay taxes for 30 years. We struggle to make
Right.
our budgets now. Our citizens say they want new growth to pay in, and we've got the highest impact fees in the country. But the good thing about that is our people that are here, it softens the burden for new growth coming in. It works directly against what we're doing, and I can't imagine we're the only ones.
And I would like to start with something that Ralph even said to me earlier on the phone. They said, we really need to change the tone. It's not really affordable housing, Ralph. Like you said, it's workforce housing. This is not affordable housing. This is workforce housing. And so when I say, when we propose something, commissioners, we need to look at it, and I'm going to use the KISS simple, keep it simple, stupid. When we have some proposed changes in it, not throwing the whole baby out with the bathwater, because there are some good things in there. But, let's talk about industrial land. If you just focus on industrial, you can probably do other things with commercial. But again, I didn't want to get into the affordable, but there are some provisions. I'll stop I think we can have a whole discussion about it. We can either do it now, or we can.
We actually have a
And-
presentation.
Yeah, and I
I
should have
think-
said,
we do, yeah.
but Commissioner Starkey.
Well, I'm going to ask for the format here. Is this the time we want to talk about that, or do you want to wait?
We have a
and-
presentation.
I think there's a
Yeah.
full presentation. And
On a
I have-
policy proposal,
Right.
on
Okay,
actually on the
well,
Live
I'll
Local.
keep my comments then so that we don't go off
Okay.
kilter. Like
I couldn't hold back,
I can
sorry.
send us off kilter.
So before we get into it, then I just want to remind you of leadership real quick. And so, and this happens a lot because we'll be talking about the budget a little bit. The current House Speaker is from Palm Coast. Palm Coast is up in the northeast over there by Jacksonville. The current Senate President is Kathleen Pasadomo down by Naples. But you also just got to start looking at those coming in. They're in their final year. They're riding in some of the most powerful time coming in. So you have Representative Danny Perez, who will be the Speaker of the House next year from South Florida. And you have Senator Ben Albritton, who I know a lot of you are shaking your head. We know, we've met with before. He is from Bartow, some more central Florida. By the way, both those areas were hit by hurricanes. I just want to reiterate that. The ones coming up afterwards are already been planned, and they're already been voted for, and that's Sam Garrison in the House. He is another representative. He is up by the northeast in Orange Park. This is unofficial, but understood to be official. Jim Boyd from Manatee County will be the Senate President during that same term. It is not official. They have not taken the vote, so I want to be very, very firm with that.
When we talk about leadership, the House goes a little faster than the Senate. They take their time, which is good.
They've always done it.
Yeah.
The House has already, as he said, made their vote in last session. It was Jennifer Kennedy. If her last name sounds familiar, her husband is on the Supreme Court, Florida Supreme Court, and she is also, I believe, from Lakeland.
Yes.
And the last one is Jay Trumbull. He is from the Panhandle up there near Panama City. So I just kind of give you guys an understanding of where some of the future leaders are from. This is the part where I nerd out. I want to kind of give you guys a full understanding of the Revenue Estimating Conference and what they just reported. The new state and national economic forecasts, they take everything in by a Revenue Estimating Conference, and they meet several times a year. The first forecast that they talked about in February still had an assumed mild recession in the first and second quarter of 2023 that has not manifested. When I'm saying this in the economist way, I know there's others. So that disruption is still evident, and it's coming. And some of those are varied impacts on household savings are less now. Credit card usage is more. You're seeing a more normalization of spending and people going out. As you know, coming out of COVID times, and there's strong inflationary pressures on households. You're feeling the pressure. It's harder now buying consumables. How many times have you heard what the price of eggs have gone up and everything else? So explained in part by the recession's failure to materialize, we've had a very good 2022, 2023, and we even had more money coming in 2023 and in 2024. They had $2.7 billion more projected from the one that they just did in July beyond what the projection did in February. So I'm giving you, so they did February's, they did July's. Over 2 years, we almost have $3 billion. They almost have $1 billion more coming in for this fiscal year. And I always get asked, so what happens if that is coming in, what do they do? That stays in reserves. It doesn't get spent. It cannot get spent without legislative authorization. That stays in the reserves and put over until next year. So $1 billion now. The sales tax gains, I want to kind of give you some implications, are up on every single count. When I say sales tax for cars, sales tax for all other goods, every single bit is up. For my realtors, they'll also appreciate this. There was a little slowdown for a few months, but not below what they had expected, but it's actually gone up and over. So part of those projections are also projecting the housing market continuing in the way that it is, and that will continue to have the funding come back from the doc stamps. Yep. The conference also noted risks, though, to sales tax projections, including consumers returning pretty soon to a typical purchasing mix of goods with inflation when it hits in. When inflation hits in, a recession hits in, you're going to see that pull back, and that's what they're projecting after 2024. The conference also increased the forecast by $256 million for sales tax moving forward, and even higher for the housing market. So meaning they didn't expect those two areas to slow down in 2023, 2024.
If you're going to talk about that,
I'm going to wait.
till later on.
Yeah, I'll
That's
wait.
gonna be-
So I like to tell you that because, in other words, we've added more money to this one, more money to next year. That tells you a very good sign going into the last time. I've been in the legislature when the recession has hit, so has Ralph. It is a very lean time. It is difficult. Items get cut. I don't expect that, but I do expect, as I told you in the beginning comments, to see a lot of that money give back to taxpayers that they have done in tax cuts.
Right.
So,
Right. And then-
go ahead, sir.
I was just going to say, the other thing that we can agree upon, unfortunately, legislation that we can guarantee that will probably happen is preemption.
Right.
What it will be, we don't know. But it's just almost a given that it will happen. The good thing is that this session, it's going to move quickly. They'll start their committee meetings really in October. There's only one chamber meeting in September. And then they start in January. And they're going to want to be out in 60 days. It's election year for all the House members and half of the Senate members. So they will be out, and we don't anticipate any special session. Other issues that will not come up, I think this past session, we spent a lot of time with the governor's platform. I don't think he's going to have as much as he had last time. So it'll make the session go by quicker. So with that, that's the outlook that we predict for the 2024 legislative session. And we can go ahead and start with our organization and staff, talking about the policy proposals that we would like to bring up and address. So the first one up is, I'm going to bring up David Engel to fill in and talk about the Live Local. You just go right to there, and I've got the mic that we can pass down.
Is there going to be something on this? No, okay.
We'll just put you in the hot seat, yeah.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. David Engel, Economic Growth. I'm here today to represent David Goldstein, who's at the Planning Commission meeting this afternoon in Newport Richey.
You won't hear a sound. It does pick up on the tape, though.
And also in collaboration with Nectarios Pitos, the Planning Director. We assisted David in crafting a 2024 policy proposal submission for Live Local. And before I get into the dynamics of the proposed document, I would just like to indicate that the Board of County Commissioners' primary platform and strategic plan addresses the fact that there is a need and we have to develop a balanced community with a balanced, diversified tax base. We are basically been identified as a bedroom community for many years, and the board has realized and acknowledged that a balanced tax base and a job-creating component in our economy will make a sustainable, equitable community over the long term. So keeping that in mind, last year the state legislature passed and the governor signed into law the Live Local Act. And the Live Local Act is very intrusive to local land use policy and also fiscal policy. The statutes now, as they read, indicate that in any commercial or industrial zoned area of any community, a Live Local project consisting of a minimum of 40% low and moderate housing can entertain a site within that area, and it consumes very scarce industrial and job-creating land. And in fact, the board has been concerned about this for the 5 years I've been the Economic Growth Director. And 2 years ago, they instituted a study from the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council trying to identify the balance in how we can go about providing the jobs, but also maintaining and reserving land for employment. And to that end, the law, as it reads today, is in direct conflict with board policy. The Live Local Act also does other things that are very detrimental to the community, and that's our fiscal responsibility. If there is projects that consist of Live Local and there's 70 affordable units or greater, those projects and those units are exempt from ad valorem taxes, from up to 80% of the average monthly income level in the region. Those units and those households, those units to pay zero ad valorem taxes. And from above 80 up to 120%, there's a 75% reduction in ad valorem taxes. And the reason that it's important to note is that residential development constitutes a cost-intensive development for the county. Residential consumes more of county services and costs than it delivers in taxes. And the balancing act is in the employment side. Industrial and also commercial development generate more tax dollars. And we need that to cover government services. And I'll make a case in point. When we're a growing county, and what are the pressures and challenges for us down the road? That's providing schools, parks, recreational amenities, and also basic life safety. That's fire, that's our paramedics, and the sheriff's department. And as you know, the sheriff is very undermanned as it is. And if we don't have the tax revenue coming in, that means that the rest of the county is subsidizing the housing that we're injecting into these industrial commercial areas. All of our industrial commercial areas are not designed and comprehensively planned for housing. In fact, we are promulgating and working with certain developers to bring forth low and moderate projects, whether it be through our community development department or initiatives through our planning and development department. And those properties and projects are well situated. They're near schools, they're near retail amenities, they're near parks, and they're not isolated in industrial areas that have no amenities for residential development. So in fact, we believe that there needs to be a revision into the current law. And the revision is focused on the balance between jobs and housing. And if you remember, there was a very important chart in the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council study showing that Pasco County is dramatically imbalanced towards housing and not against jobs. So there's there's actually an appendix to the documented revised law proposal, and you'll see it's housing, jobs, balance, impact on commuting and commute times. And we are proposing that the law be amended that for counties and cities that are below .9 on this chart, meaning that they're biased towards housing and don't have enough jobs to support the housing, that they be exempt from the Live Local Act. That'll be a more equitable way of producing low and moderate housing within the region and within the state. I am very sensitive to affordable housing. Back in the 1980s, when I lived in New Jersey, I was on the New Jersey Supreme Court Affordable Housing Council, and we drafted up an affordable housing plan for the entire state. And the courts had some wisdom at that point because they indicated that to meet certain regional goals, they gave every city in the state the opportunity to craft their own plan because the courts realized that every city was unique. And this one-size-fit-all doesn't work, and it really hurts Pasco County.
Any questions for Dave?
Well, I do have
Well,
some
just-
questions.
Mr. Oakland first, sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
He's ready to go.
Okay. David, I appreciate that report. It lines up with what Pasco's looking for. We've been too long a bedroom community to other areas in Hillsborough and also other counties where people they're living here, but they're actually going from here to work elsewhere. And we've been working very hard. I know for the 6, 7 years that I've been here, we've been working very hard to make as many jobs as possible in our county to where we definitely don't need to lose warehouse and jobs and things of that nature to Hernando County to the north or Hillsborough to the south. We need those here. And even in saying that, and the growth is large because we're listed as 5th largest community growth in the country. The fact of it is we don't have enough housing here right now for all the jobs we have coming for our economy. And we just need to be sure we don't lose any warehouse space or any big jobs and manufacturers and things of this nature to other counties around us. We need those in our county and need him here so to support the residential that we do have. And in fact, it actually helps our citizens by having that because it keeps our taxes on our citizens down, and we definitely need that.
Well, Commissioner, the law, the way it's written today, really dissuades people from obtaining local jobs. If we're taking and consuming very scarce employment-generating lands, then the people that are coming in and live local, where are they going to work? And how are they going to get to work? So we're basically putting people in a situation where the affordability factors diminish substantially.
Yeah, it's very important to have affordability and workforce housing. And something like Lacucci that we're trying to grow and bring more business and all in that area. We also need workforce housing for those people to live in. A lot of people talk about the fact that intro house for new families are $300,000. There's people that can't even afford to pay their PVAS or paving assessments, and yet they're looking to have an entry house for them would be $300,000. They can't come up with that. They can't come up with the money for paving a road. So it's very important to watch out for expanding and bringing more business into our county.
Commissioner Starkey.
First, I want to thank the board for going forward with that project in my district with Dominium yesterday that will bring 268 affordable housing units to the community at 60% AMI. 80% and 120% you know, I'm not sure how affordable that is, but it's better than nothing. But there's no doubt that we could have all predicted this was gonna happen when the Sadowski Trust Fund was continuously used for other purposes other than what it was found. And I'm just wondering I think we all agree that workforce housing is important to the state and we have an issue with it. But it's just, I think, the manner of delivery. And wouldn't it make sense to just maybe funnel some more money to our community development departments in the counties and offer more opportunity for those people who are in this business to build more? Because right now they have to compete for grants. I believe it can be, there's a lottery for getting some of these funds, right? Not for SHIP? Which ones have the lottery? Our experts back
I
here.
think Marcy's here.
But I know that we had an adult workforce housing or affordable housing, one that we all approved to go forward that was on State Road 54 near Old 54. And we helped them move forward, but they didn't win in the lottery, so they couldn't build. This was before your time, so.
They are building now. That's Tanager Square. And what you're talking
Now,
about.
this one was a Clark Hobby client on 54 before you were here.
Okay. So Commissioners, for the record, Marcy Esberg, Director of Community Development. And I think what you're speaking of is the lottery at the state level
Yeah.
for the low-income tax credits.
Yes,
And
and
yes,
if we offered more of that money, couldn't the companies where this is their space and their lane and know how to manage these kind of projects, build more potentially?
They could, but that lottery is millions of dollars, and we're not even near that. I mean, we're getting between $5 and $7 million of SHIP funding, but I have a proposal that we're going to discuss a little bit later about dividing that money up, because that is an issue.
So one of the problems with this kind of project that was brought up at a fact meeting and a workshop was the companies that do this are set up to know how to do the income verification and to manage those. But I don't believe that these companies who are coming in have that expertise to do the income verification and management.
Yeah.
And who's that gonna fall to? That's another cost that
That's a
will
good
probably
question.
come to the county that is not and with the loss of ad valorem and the hit on the schools, the fire department, the sheriff's office, it's gonna also burden our county staff to be the ones regulating and being sure that they're following the rules. So I think the whole program, while a worthy idea, it just needs to continue to be tweaked.
If I can give you some, Commissioner, real quick, if you can look at this sheet real quick, I'm gonna give you some numbers real quick for unemployment rates, just
Where-
interesting
do
how
we
this
have that in
correlates.
here?
No, I'm not gonna give it, because I just came out
Oh.
yesterday.
Okay.
Was that ratio 0.9?
Yes.
Okay, so to the right, I have Pinellas County, 2.9% unemployment rate. Hillsborough, 3.1% unemployment rate. To the left, Citrus County, or on the line, 4.6. Hernando, 4.0. Pasco, 3.5. Anything starting to, you get what I'm saying? I mean, I only did the 5 that had in the Tampa Bay area, the statewide unemployment is 3.1. But I'm saying, just understand what a 0.9 is. That's going to be a hard one to explain to folks, number one, but I want to, let's talk about, and I love it, and I leaned over to Ralph and I said, Ralph, how do I actually explain this 0.9? And he said simply, jobs, poor community. We are a jobs poor community, and we should say this, Commissioners, we have more people leaving, like we said last time we were here, Pasco County than any other county in the whole Tampa Bay area to work somewhere else.
Yeah, we're in the top, I was close to the top 10
Okay.
for that.
That's a great point. I was wondering how you're going to get that data, but that makes sense. That's a
That's
great
right
way to
It
go.
is, yeah.
When I look at the amount of industrial land that we've taken, preserved, and people like Powers Dorset over in Southwind was like holding on his property, just took all the residential property, switched it to industrial, that's the type of thing you want. And to the state of Florida, you would think that, all right, you get all these people who want to come to Florida now, for all the right reasons, right? We're all smart people, we all live here now. So for that, there's more coming. Nobody shut the door behind us, so they're all coming. They're gonna need jobs when they get here.
Yeah.
Right? And if we take away the industrial land, the commercial land, the mixed-use land, and just let housing go in, all of a sudden, you're gonna be in a situation where they're not gonna be able to work, and those numbers are gonna get worse, and it's not good for the state. I mean, how many times you hear about when people are shipping stuff down to Florida, it's expensive to bring it down to Florida, but those trucks are going back empty, because there's nothing to bring back up.
Right.
The more stuff we make here, the better off we'd be anyway, to balance out our whole transportation issue with freight.
Right.
So
Don't
I'm-
exasperate your jobs poor.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
jobs for the same.
So JobsPort is great for us.
Yes.
And I think just that flexibility that, sometimes you're gonna hold on to land longer for industrial. And I know when I first started, that was one of the big things over on Shady Hills Road, or Hayes Road, where they had industrial that was there and switched over to residential. And, cost jobs for that area that would have been right there right now. Instead we got residential. Commissioner Oakley.
Yet at the same time, we got a lot of jobs coming in, but they're not high-paying jobs. So when you got all the inflation and everything going up, I had someone email me today that the commissioners were raising taxes. Well, the values are going up. We're not changing any millage to raise taxes, but the fact of it is, it's going to cost our citizens more and more money. Inflation's hitting them at the grocery store. They're having to pay more. And it seems like the job pay and the market out there is not staying caught up with what's happening. So it's really unbalanced to where people can be able to work here and be able to live, because they're looking for better jobs. So we need to strive to try to get as much of better jobs as we can, higher paying jobs.
So I would say if we can, and we're gonna continue that, if we can strike the whole part of changing our industrial land for letting those guys come in, just strike the whole thing. If you can't get there, then use a jobs poor argument to move
And
forward.
that's the argument that they use, is to exclude those counties that are jobs poor, and then we be removed from that clause rather than repealing the whole.
Right,
It's a good argument. I think it's a good argument, and I think it's an argument that I've been talking with the legislators, that they think it's palatable that they could even sell next session.
So this has to be an amendment. There's not a state senator that is sitting in the state senate that is going to do a full bill to pull her bill, right? And we're all laughing, but I'm being serious. Then lastly, it's got to have to be understandable. And I think we can put a couple of those bullet points, and I'll leave it with this. The same message of just be prepared to answer this question, guys. Because the same thing they've said, that's fine. If we implement this policy and we change some of these that we feel is a benefit, which we don't, what are you going to do to expedite affordable workforce housing projects in your county? We have to.
And we just did one yesterday, and
We did,
Port
right.
Richie's doing one. I think it went through, so
I get it.
we are working on it.
And I do want to give you, I just heard in some of the reading I did, some municipalities are actually passing ordinances that would require a public hearing for development proposals involving affordable housing. So they're making public, because the public has also been a little bit upset that industrial is being changed. And so I'm just, on my reading of it, I found out some municipalities are doing that around the state. But lastly, I think the other discussion has to be, what is affordable housing? Right, affordable housing.
That's right.
Affordable truly isn't somebody who couldn't afford a $2,000, one bedroom, could afford it
Class A.
at $1,800, right? So what truly, and maybe that dynamic needs to be discussed, because you're gonna see developers, take a bite, and you've already seen this, and move these projects forward. But I think we need to have a bigger discussion with the legislature on true workforce housing, not just a $2,000 off of $200 off of $2,000 a month.
I mean, and it's gonna be difficult to not push people into rentals compared to ownership.
Right.
And that's a big issue right now, because with interest rates as high as they are, it's driven that cost up. Hard to get them financed. They're doing all sorts of creative things, buy down rates, so it's a difficult move. But, again, you just don't want to take away your prime industrial job-creating land of housing, and somehow that's got to shift.
Right.
That's easily explained.
I
Sure.
think so.
Sure. And I think staff did a good job, and it's a two-parter, so excluding those counties that are job poor, and be removed from that mandatory, that developers can come in and use these lands that were never intended that way. And we have also plenty of residential zone property as it is right now. And I don't think that was ever the intent of what the president and the legislature really wanted to do. It's just one of those things, they put it into place and let's see what happens. I remember in the discussions, when they thought of Pasco County, they thought of 19 in an existing building that sat empty there for years, that someone would come in and take up and utilize that space. Nice concept.
Genius.
Has it happened? No. But,
what
you know,
they wrote.
it backfired on them, with their idea. So, but I think the staff, like I said, did a good job, and we clearly show that first one, and on the second part, it was a two-pronger. And David did mention this, is that you make the mandatory property tax exemption on Live Local, make it an option like the other tax exemption that's currently in the bill for those counties that have law enforcement officers per capita rate that is at the bottom third in the state. That way, it narrows in on those counties. It gives us,
And starts with the letter P.
Yes.
And I know you guys are all good at this, but remember, there
done
was
that
a lot
for
of good things in the
Monroe
bill.
County
There was
many
$811
times.
million extra for sale, for SHIP, for the Hometown Heroes. So as we're talking to your delegation, and I'm telling you guys, call them up, talk to them and say, we're concerned about this. We're hearing from other county commissioners around the state. You all did some amazing things in this bill. I always hate to saying the word "but" because that always takes away everything you just said. But there are some things we need to come back. And I think they're going to be ready to make some technical changes, but I just also want to leave you with this. I also have been told when I brought this up time after time with legislators that we have to wait another year because of Senator Pasadomo. Senator Pasadomo will be here 2 more years after she's Senate president. So, no, I would say we need to do
We
something.
can do it now.
Now.
And I think it's eligible. I've already, we've been talking with some of our members of our delegation, and they're receptive to the idea of proposing something, and we'll continue to talk with them. This will be an issue that'll be brought up at FAC as well. What comes out,
Next
and will it be legislation that they write next month when it does come up for their policy? Or will it be, we support change? But I'll even say, my counterpart in Hillsborough and Pinellas, we've been meeting this summer. Hillsborough and those 2 counties, they would like us to be united. I said, we can be united on the issue that we need to do change on Live Local. We might not be on the same page or deal with the same issues that we have. We're a job-poor county. Our people are living here and working in your counties. And, we have an issue with the law enforcement on the tax exemption. But I think you're going to see all counties and municipalities united that we're already seeing problems. Even though it's been a short period of time, we need to go in there and tweak it again.
So with FAC, when they look at something, they're going to look at something and get behind it one way or another. They're going to look at what's good for the overall state.
Correct.
Like even the Gulf Coast Consortium, after we
Correct.
picked it up and ran with that for a bit, they shifted that back over, just the 23 counties, and they've worked that issue because it's unique to them. And I think the jobs for is a good argument for us, but if you push that argument, you may lose a Hillsborough, which you're going to want in the mix. So I think it's come back to let the locals figure it out. They've already put their plans in place. They've had citizen participation saying where they want these jobs to go. We all want jobs in the county. Give us the flexibility. I want to ask Marcy a question. Yesterday, Marcy, at the board meeting, we had a couple of items coming Tuesday. We had a couple items coming up. One was Dominion, as Commissioner Starkey talked about, and they had a low-income thing of 60% AMI. And right behind it, we had another one coming in that was going to be 80% MI. The Dominion was able to say that they wouldn't be looking to get the tax break from the property taxes, but the other one wouldn't take that position, and they were selling it for more money. How do they break that out? Is there a way to simplify that we can make a recommendation?
So financing of affordable housing is not my specialty, but I will say that both of those developers finance in totally different ways. And Dominium is a national company, and they have deeper pockets, and they use 4% non-competitive tax credits because they have a lot more funding to do the work that they do. And that's why the funding that they get makes them go for 60% or less. It's tied to that funding source. That's why they do it that way. Whereas Bayonet Gardens is, they've got a whole section of land, and that section of land they're using different projects for. So one of the things that came through on consent was putting that project forward for the 9% competitive tax credits. And that will have to be served at a certain rate. And then the rest of their project, whatever they do, whether they go to 80% or up to 120. So my understanding is that is all tied to the funding source. So again, this tax credits will, if they go for tax credits and they get those tax credits, they'll tell them, you have to rent to people of a certain income.
Okay. All right, any more on this subject? Any more on this subject? I know we got a few different items to cover. Okay, let's go to the next one.
The next one on our list is from Corrections, and we'll ask Chief Jenkins to come up.
Hello?
So what we're looking at doing, and welcome to jail operations, that's one. So jail's expensive, inmate medical costs are expensive. Your medical provider is taking about 25% of the overall jail budget to operate, the medical piece. So last year, we had a $1.5 million outside medical cap, which meant for inmates that were leaving the facility and going out and getting treatment at a hospital, or if a specialist was coming into the jail, we had a $1.5 million cap written into our medical budget in order to fund the cost of those services for the inmate. We went over that $1.5 million cap. It was $2.25 million. This year, when we came to the county from the sheriff's operation, we put in place a $2 million cap, knowing that we had gone over last year. So that was written in our current contract. So what we're looking at is a legislative change to Florida Statute 951. So currently, Florida Statute 951, and it's .23, it provides that the county is responsible for medical care of the inmate. So when we send an inmate out, initially the hospital will look at that inmate to pay, and most of our inmates either had Medicaid when they came in or they had no insurance. Medicaid goes away upon an inmate being incarcerated in the county jail.
We're gonna talk about that in a second.
Yeah, and so, because we're not a Medicaid expansion state, so therefore, those
You ready to
costs,
talk about
again, Medicaid's not available for the inmate population. The inmate can be billed, but most of them are indigent, and therefore the cost, the hospital is supposed to seek payment from that inmate prior to coming to the county, but we know that we get those bills. Those bills can take anywhere up to 6 months to come in after treatment, and we are paying those costs to the county. So right now, there is not a designated cost or contract across the board for all of our hospitals and for all of our providers. And the Department of Corrections does have a statute that provides that they pay 110% of Medicare, not Medicaid rates, but Medicare rates, and it may be up to 125% of Medicare rates. We are just looking at a statute change that kind of caps the expenses that the county is paying for inmate medical costs.
Commissioner Starkey.
Well, I'm 100% for this, but I want to expand on it a little further. And so at NACO, and as chairperson of the FAC Federal Policy Committee, we've been looking at the issue of when someone is arrested and they go to jail, not charged and, becoming a customer of our jail for a sentence, but when they're arrested and spend time in our jail, they immediately lose their Medicare and Medicaid, their federal benefits. My understanding is they have now waived that for states that suspend Medicare, federal benefits, but Florida is a termination state. So, so what we need to find out is what does it take for Florida to move from a termination of federal benefit state to a suspended state, so that we can take advantage of that policy change. And I've spoken to Congressman Bilirakis about it. It's actually part of his committee. But I think it takes language in Tallahassee to switch us from one to the other.
Okay.
But we have full support of all the counties in Florida and frankly, across the country, to be able to have these people who've been arrested keep their benefits until they get charged.
And correct me if I'm
Not charged,
wrong, I'll
found
ask.
guilty.
I'll ask the county attorney, it's like before, until they're adjudicated, is?
Yes.
Yeah,
And when I showed this to Senator Rubio in Washington last year, and he couldn't believe it. And as an attorney, he's reading it, and he said, and this comes from the Social Security Act in 1956. And he said, they just didn't define it right. And then all these years, we've had to live with this cost to the counties. So he didn't think it was a hard fix, and he saw the issue right away.
Yep.
I also spoke to Senator Scott's people, but this is a high priority at NACO.
It is.
And right now, we could fix it here in Florida if we just went from a termination state to suspension state. It doesn't help everything that you spoke about, because these are just for people who aren't adjudicated yet, but it's a problem. And if you have a family under your federal benefits, they lose their federal benefits as well.
Yep.
Ralph and I just learned something today.
No, I knew that part.
No, the first
Yeah.
part, you're talking about this, I didn't
Yeah,
realize
so,
that.
so it's a problem.
So is it a federal decision or is it a state
Well,
decision?
she
It's part
said
of the
it's-
Social Security Act
Yeah.
that they lose it, that they lose their benefits. So that's a congressional fix.
Right.
But they have
I'll check
made,
into the suspended state. Yeah.
they have fixed it for suspended states, but not states that terminate, and we are a termination state.
Got it.
So we need to, maybe Sean, you can help me with Congressman Bilirakis to help him understand it. I tried to explain it.
The question is
And
that
then-
tied to the,
Florida
to
legislature?
Medicare
That's what I'm trying to-
expansion? It may very well be.
So it's not a
No,
decision the legislature
no.
or the governor can make, it's gotta be.
Well-
Well, it might be.
Right.
Okay,
From
I don't know,
Well,
I don't know the,
fifty-six.
I don't know the nuances
political
between a
issue, that- yeah,
suspended
between
or
that's political,
termination.
I think we can research it. and
We
figure
will,
out the right
we will
approaches.
on that part.
But
So,
I think
Very
this
interesting.
makes sense, yeah.
so going back to what Stacy said, I know she was going to talk about that one bill that, they tried to do this before in 2012, and so we have some information there, which is good, makes it easier. It passed the Senate. Like any bill, sometimes it get bogged down, and it got stuck in the House. Don't know why it's not been addressed. I'm looking at the sponsors from 2012. Of course, they're no longer here.
Yeah.
But it makes it easier if this is an issue that you want to pursue and you think.
Absolutely.
I think this should be a priority for us and,
So just to say that, so the hospital is gonna be the one that fight this, correct? Because they're not getting.
Because they're gonna get,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there's-
Oh,
now, and you addressed this and you had a point raised. So what can we do via the contract process? And when you set up that contract, it's an annual contract that you set up with each individual hospital?
It's not, so, previously, I can tell you that I personally, years ago, went to multiple hospitals. We went to Trinity, we went to, Bayonet Point, we went down to Tampa General, and, we ended up with, one contract from, Bayonet Point, who tends to be, the provider that we utilize the most at the jail. But it was a Medicare plus, and that has changed because now they're going strictly on DRG rate. So the contracts right now are set up by the medical provider. So I do not negotiate rates with the hospitals.
Okay.
The medical providers negotiate the rates with the hospitals.
I'm just thinking about this just a little bit here. Stacy, so I mean, to me, it sounds like if these are indigent folks and they were outside of jail coming to a hospital, they would be, the hospitals would be stuck with the bill. But because the local government is coming forward, we're in a must-pay situation, and we're not being afforded protections that, say, other government entities that are guaranteeing payment. We're paying whatever the rate, prevailing private rate might be. I mean, this sounds like an inflation healthcare issue. Seems like it's in line with a lot of the priorities. I think it's something we really need to tackle here. 'Cause it's,
We have inmates, we're treating a lot of inmates for cancer, and they'll obtain their treatments while they're in the jail. When they're released, they do not get treatment, they're rearrested, and they're in worse shape than when they had done previously, and we fix that back up.
And who's the medical provider then?
Right now, we have a contract provider, it's currently well-paid, but we are out on an invitation to negotiate right now.
I mean, can that be part of the negotiations with the contract?
well, I don't know. That's a question back, but I don't think they're incentivized to negotiate. It doesn't seem like it.
Well,
but-
we've
They want $2 million
discussed
for your
other,
business.
other vendors. I mean, that's gonna be part of the negotiation process. We're going to, we just went out. They're currently answering all the questions. Some medical providers do a not to exceed, almost like a CMAR. Right? And then you split the cost savings, if there's cost savings, but then you know, whether or not you split the overages. So they're incentivized also, like, they don't get dollar for dollar if they go over. So, but that'll be part of the process we go through. We're not putting a hard line, or hopefully not put a hard line, because they go over, we pay the bill. How would we do that?
You know, so just being, as I mentioned earlier, I agree with the policy, I absolutely understand it. You know, I think we've already said it, you're fighting the Florida Hospital Association, those individually. They already feel that they don't get the funding that they should for indigent care. I mean, I know you guys, there's pots of money, but don't we, part of our agreements, don't we pay part of that state agreement for the indigent care from the county also?
I have to defer.
Right? Right. I mean,
What's it called?
HCRA.
HICRA.
It's just a big issue in Tallahassee. It's one of the last items in the budget that they agree upon what hospitals get for indigent care. So I'm just, and this will be, I don't know what the pot of money would be statewide for them, but it's pretty big. Just think we should have some conversation, something with the legislators, but again, it may be the right time, right year with the healthcare conversation.
Stacy, I wouldn't mind seeing a breakdown. Show us what these major costs are. I'm sure these cancer treatments are like phenomenally in cost and percentage-wise for the people there. It would seem to me if I was an indigent person and I
Don't
was.
say it. Don't say it. It might get picked up in the paper.
It's gonna get picked up.
No, I whispered that to Oakley. No,
But I mean,
don't give them the idea.
Logic's logic. I mean, there's a push for them to come back in so they
Yeah.
get cancer
Yeah.
treatment.
Well,
I mean,
some of them will
the
have
system's broken.
Medicaid, and that's just crazy. You get arrested and you're in jail, and then you lost that health care that you had before you came in.
And you can be found not guilty, and you've lost everything, and you have to reapply.
And that affects the families, like you say.
Then
So
we
it's a
have
bad thing.
high amounts of recidivism. Yeah.
And just come back in so I can get care. I don't know, that's definitely a complex issue to go forward with.
Right.
Well, we'll get together with Sean and let's flesh it out into some very, using your KISS principle there, and we'll continue that conversation.
Thank you for bringing us a simple issue.
Yeah. Let me float an idea out there. I know we talked about this, we did the jail construction as we're going through and looked at different things and tried to incorporate the medical. And I suggest we put a building out beside it for like a clinic where they don't have to go to a regular hospital. Now they go right in, and kind of, I think Charlotte County did something like that where they had built in, they built it in for behavioral health, mental health,
Right.
drug addiction, and just regular care. so that when they went, they didn't have to go to a hospital, they could go right there, get treatment. And after 4 years, 5 years, I think Eric was telling me it was working pretty well down there.
Yeah, we have, we've been down to Charlotte County, and we have all the similar services that Charlotte County has. I think the only thing that we may not be doing, that they may be doing currently, is dialysis. And we do have a room in the new build for dialysis, but it does not have the equipment. So right now, a provider would have to come in with that equipment.
I just said that before we actually check them in, and maybe they lose their coverage, let's go treat them medically first if we need to, and then bring them in.
We have several more, so I
Yes,
think we want
yes.
to,
All right, move on.
get to your items as well. so.
Right, exactly. So the next issue that we have, I'm going to have Adolfo Gonzalez come up and talk to us about contract amounts and continuation of contracts. It affects several departments in our organization.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Adolfo Gonzalez, your Utilities Engineering and Contract Management Director. We have a request to amend the Consultants Competitive Negotiations Act. Under that act, public agencies such as Pasco County secures professional services related to engineering, architecture, landscape architecture, and survey services. One of the types of contracts that we secure through that service are continuing services contract. Those contracts allows the board to select a list of qualified consultants that then we could issue task orders to do all sorts of design and studies under that contract. The typical time that it takes to go from scope definition to having the board accept the list of qualified consultants is about 6 to 8 months. But once that solicitation process is over, we then can issue task orders and define a scope and have it either executed by the county administrator, depending on the purchasing threshold, or by the board, and save anywhere from 4 to 6 months off of the typical solicitation schedule. Under the current statute, a continuing service contract can be used for design services so long as the estimated cost of construction is less than $4 million, or if an individual study is less than $500,000. And those thresholds are burned into the statute. So what's happened, by the way, those thresholds were last increased by the legislature in 2020. Since 2020, we've seen substantial increases in the cost of construction, mostly because of supply chain issues, the global pandemic, an inadequate lack of workforce to help us get our projects moving along quicker. But since those thresholds are burned in, as the construction cost of construction goes up, we're limited as to the number of task orders we can then use because it's tied to that $4 million threshold. And then that means we had to go out to solicitation again, and we're back to a much longer process to start a project and then deliver it for the citizens of Pasco County. What we're asking you to do is to ask the state legislature to increase those thresholds from $4 million for construction costs and $500,000 for a study to $10 million and $1 million. Now, this amendment would benefit all public agencies within the state of Florida, not just Pasco County. It does benefit all your operating departments that manage professional services related to engineering, architecture, landscape architecture, or surveying, because it allows us then to issue these task orders under your approval for higher value construction dollar amounts.
And I'll tell you, Sean, that's a real issue.
I'm mouthing over to Mike, this is good.
And,
Yeah.
and then the costs are so much higher when we
Right.
have to do it again.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like you never get to play catch up.
It's common sense. Going back to the top issue next to the session, inflation, this is the type of thing that's going to be understood. It
You
makes
see-
a lot of sense.
And you
it
see the
saves
last
tax
paragraph
dollars.
where it's indexed?
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
sir.
indexed.
And I'm going to tell you, it might even go higher than that,
Right.
especially on the construction side. I'll give you just one example of a grant that we are involved with. Remember Representative Fine? Talking about Indian River?
Right.
Talking about all the treatment out there, the
Yes, sir.
baffle box, et cetera? Found out that we've actually had companies in Tampa doing it for 30 years.
Right.
We haven't done any ourselves, but even St. Pete's done it, Molesmaro's done it, even Tarpon Springs. And I was working with the estuary program, trying to get them to expand their area, so that we didn't just have the Hillsborough River run through Pasco, that we could actually pick up and do along the coast, these same baffle boxes to go help the Gulf. We actually did a joint venture with them. We picked up 9.5 million, well above this number. The amount of money that the estuary just got was $1 million to go set up and do the estuary study, you know, for the whole area, for the whole
Right.
region. That's like perfect numbers he's
It
talking
is.
about right there.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking even that 10 million number might be better to go higher, especially with all
Can we ever
the.
do anything that it continues to raise on their consumer price index in the future?
Well,
Or
it's not even for that though,
Well,
Sean.
yes, we've
Hang
included
on
that
for a
in
second.
there.
Right, but I'm saying, all right, yeah.
But part of the thing
sorry.
is, there's so much money out there federally and state that's out there, that these numbers are gonna be higher for a lot of the projects, so why not give ourselves a cushion to go even higher than that? I would even say go to 20 million.
Now, Commissioners, during the 2020 legislative session, the original ask was for a $5 million threshold, and the Appropriations Committee reduced it down to $4 million. The original ask also included an escalation clause, some kind of indexing, and the Government Oversight Committee eliminated that portion from the finally approved bill. I don't know why, but those were two things that were amended or changed last time when this bill was finally adopted by the state.
Well, I appreciate it, because that helps us with some information kind of going into that, and, but I think it's, throw it at the wall, and I think this is a reasonable request, and, I mean, if you do hire, you could, I mean, I kind of understand why he did double the amount, 500,000 to $1 million, and a little bit over double on the 10 million, but.
There'll be a balancing act with it. I will tell you that typically I'd asked if you could find out if FICE or some of the consulting engineering companies were in favor of it. For years, the numbers in the CCNA stayed
Right.
stagnant, and they were like that since I got into consulting, right? And those numbers had stayed until 2020, which was a relief. But now, of course, the inflation, you look at those numbers, $4 million, that used to be the cost of a fire station. Now we've got fire stations that are upwards of $6, $7, $8, $10 million. And so now, to say that we've got to go add another year to the procurement process and go through just to even build a fire station, for those of us in growth counties, I think that there's a
agree.
sense of urgency there. But I do think you could get other municipalities behind this. Possibly the consulting engineers could be behind it. It's double-edged,
Right.
because if they don't have continuing services contracts, then
Right.
they're kind of cut out of it. So there's probably a sweet spot there, but what Adolfo is bringing up is very real. The numbers that were pitched in 2020 aren't the same as they are in 2023.
Right.
So we may want to consider enlisting other support, especially
Sure.
from those other agencies and organizations.
Something comes to mind is, what about like a wastewater treatment plant? What's that gonna cost?
No, that's, you're into eight figures
Bigger
on
num-
those.
big
right?
numbers.
I mean, it's something to look at. Maybe it's even a clause to throw in there.
Yeah.
I did have a quick conversation this morning with the executive director of the Florida Engineering Society. He was not aware of any public agency requesting this, but he was going to poll his membership to see if there was any other interest throughout the state for it.
Yeah, that's good.
Stacy, see how much easier his was? See that?
Thank you, Adolfo. Any other questions?
All good?
No.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay. The next issue that we have, we're going to bring up Marcy Esberg to talk about the SHIP program.
I saw someone got money from ballot boxes when I was going through the
Thank you, and again, Marcy Esberg, Director of Community Development. And I am speaking about the statute, which is the Sadowski Act, which came into play about 1991. And in the statute 420.9075, it gives every community very clear direction on how to establish an affordable housing program, plan, and how they have to allocate the funding that they get. So as you know, we are a community that gets Sadowski funding from the state. It's our SHIP funding. And, you know, we have gotten anywhere since I've been here to 0 to 5.5 million. And with the increase that is coming from the Live Local Act, we, I think, are getting 7.7 million. However, if you look at the statute, and it is I guess I don't, there's a section of the statute which tells us how we have to spend our funding. And 65% of the funding that comes in has to go to home ownership activities. And this is throughout the state. So this is very prescriptive. They're telling every single community, this is what you have to do. So when you do the math, let's just use $7 million, 65% of that, over $4 million has to go to home ownership activities. Now, while I realize I spent 10 years of my career in helping low and moderate income persons become first-time home buyers, and I realize that that home ownership is the key to stability for our communities. It's the key to quality neighborhoods. It is the key for individual families building wealth. That's all absolutely true. But if you look at what home ownership rates were in 1991, when somebody could buy a house for $50,000 or $75,000, to now having to buy a house at $325,000, or I guess I heard this morning, the average value of a home in Pasco County is $408,000. So it makes it very difficult for us as a community development department to spend the money in that way. And then what happens is I can't even submit my report to SHIP until I've spent money in every single one of those buckets the way that they tell me to submit it. So, Commissioner, you and I have met, and you know Dominium comes and they say, we want $1 million, and then they say we want $1.5 million, and I could tomorrow put all of that $7 million to multifamily housing. However, I wouldn't even be able to submit my SHIP report because I haven't done the 65% for home ownership. So my proposal is I'm going to sort of tag team in an unusual fashion and in an agreement with David Engel is giving the opportunity for the county to do what is best for the community. Because I believe that really the sense here is to bring funding from the state to the local community for the community to solve their housing needs. The bottom line is we all want housing, we all want to meet the housing needs of our community, but what might be right for Pasco County might be different for another county. And so in the beginning of this act, they tell us that we have to do a local housing assistance plan, which we do every 3 years. So rather than them telling us you have to spend 65% of your money, my recommendation is we go to them and we say every community will decide every 3 years based on the market, what's happening in their community and the needs of what's happening in their community, how much they're going to spend on home ownership, how much they're going to do for rental housing, how much they're going to do for special needs, how much they're going to do for construction. And it's the same buckets, it just should be determined by the needs of their own community.
So giving us that flexibility. Let me ask you this, Marcy, do you know from the history of the statute, 420.9075, it was paren 5, paren A that had the 65. Who came up with that number? Who do you think came up with that number?
My assumption is that those numbers are reflective of the many groups that were in favor of the Sadowski Act. The Sadowski Act is one of those few kinds of pieces of legislation that brought in realtors, builders, Habitat for Humanity, the list goes on of the number of people that supported it. And I would imagine that realtors and builders were heavily involved in advocating for that figure.
I was wanting that, if that's what it was. So if there would be opposition, it would be more than likely those same groups that would say, no, we want to lock them in and make sure this money's going to actually purchasing a home. But it's good to have that flexibility.
Well, let me say this about flexibility. I think it's great on certain things. However, and Marcy, I think you're using on the same talking points Commissioner Oakley used yesterday when we talked about home ownership. and I'm gonna say, I wanna see more home ownership in this county. To put money in where it's just gonna be a rental thing and a rental thing, and the rents go up at a certain point in time, now they're stuck, and now they get moved. How many times have we heard about, I just got bumped out of my apartment because it just went up $600 a month or $300 a month, and I can't afford it anymore? At least with the mortgage, other than insurance costs, it's pretty stable all the way through. If we need to, if we need flexibility on how to use that 65%, maybe you can put more money now, maybe there's a cap on how much money you could use for helping someone get a home on their own. I'd rather see that number get more flexible to it than just drive the money out to a rental part. Commissioner Starkey?
I'm thinking along the same line, and just playing devil's advocate here, because, you know, I have so much respect for what you do. Is there a first, what is it, a first home buyers down payment program that we participate in? And do we just, you know, seeing if a house is $400,000, do we need to have more flexibility to be able to offer more on a down payment assistance program?
We just increased it, and so for very low income, we put $50,000 into that. And there are communities that are doing $100,000 and $125,000. However, that goes to that family, and when they sell it, you know, then we'll get that money back. But then 10 years from now, how much is that $125,000 going to cost? It might be at that point $220,000. So, you know, my argument, my professional argument would be, I can invest $125,000 or $200,000 into a rental unit that will stay affordable for 30 years and will help many families. And I will also say that right now, our ratio of home ownership to rental in our county is very heavy on home ownership. It's like 79 to 21. So even with all.
79% are owned
Yes,
versus rental.
even with all the rentals that you've seen, it still hasn't flipped that ratio yet. And so, and what we are seeing is a real trend towards people wanting to rent
Yeah, I'm
over
hearing that all the time.
ownership, especially with the younger population who saw what happened during 2008 and 9 and people losing their housing. They're like, you know, I'd rather rent. And so I think the key to any community is balance, having a wide variety of housing units available. And this would allow us to spend our money.
Well, again, I'd like to take a look closer to the, if we can expand things. I wouldn't want it even to be like just a first-time buyer person. I mean, someone might have bought a townhome, now they want to move up. That's what you want. Kind of like a small business, you let them grow to something bigger. I wouldn't even want to limit to like first-time buyer. I'd rather take that money where people can get in to their own home, own their home, because I think they're then bonded to the community better. And again, they have a chance to build wealth and create a better situation for their family, a stable situation where they know this is home. I'd much rather see that focus. So if it can be expanded.
Right.
And I think you'd get a lot of help from the realtors, because every time a home's sold, that Sadowski's fund's gonna get more money too.
Well, I'll just ask, I just looked up Florida and I looked up the state, or it's the same, and nationwide, I mean, it's 66 to 34. So one of the things we could put in here is not just this, but maybe allowing this to counties in certain percentage rates in ownership too. You know what I mean? If I'm the legislature and I look at somebody like Pasco County, who you just told me 79 to 21, that's a different percentage than another county who's 60 to 40, right?
Yeah.
So it's, you know what I mean, it's more palatable, I mean, than the whole state. I'm just.
And she's asking for flexibility to design a program that works better for our community. And maybe the things we just talked about are better for our community. I see that the ask is just
Right.
let each community determine, because each community is different, their percentages that they feel is more appropriate.
Okay. So we're hearing you. We'll go back and work on it a little bit and come back with you on that issue.
Well, and think about this. Now, I've got kids that are doing very well. They're looking at homes where they want to live, you know, Starkey Ranch. They want to be there, and the money that it costs is huge, right? other kids want to go somewhere else, whatever.
Right.
And that first move is a big move.
It is.
All the way through.
You're gonna
And
be
I had
paying.
I had a gentleman tell me earlier, he goes, if you're gonna take over my house, he says, you better get ready to go pay $1 million. It's worth like 5 or 6 now, but by the time you're getting ready, and he's like 13, 14, you better have your money aside to be able to get this house. So if I can help, again, a family grow to stay here, that's where I wanna be. So if I get flexibility that way, where she can devise a program with that help, I'm good with that.
There's also Habitat, helping people. Interesting, I had a conversation with Metropolitan Ministries yesterday, and I have something that they want to do, which I'll share with you later. But, we were talking about how we have this pipeline now where they take in homeless families at MetMin, then they can transition to our workforce housing, and then we could transition them out after a few years to a Habitat house. And what a great success story that is, all right in the same community. We could get that whole pipeline thing going.
And that Leisure Lane project, I think, was gonna be a great one until they went and sold the property on us, but that's the type of thing you could do, and you could still do in smaller pieces
Right.
to help them get their foot up.
Right.
And then they can go.
The other statistic that I find very interesting, because we just finished our consolidated plan, which you approved that went to HUD, is 30% of our households here are single-person households. So
Wow.
again, where do they go when they're here and they want to live? So maybe they have to start off in a rental before they end up creating a larger household to go and to buy. But there's different stages for people based on their household and their stage of life. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Marcy.
Okay, and then the next issues that we're going to address, I don't see, is Adam here?
Adam's here.
Okay,
Oh, he's hiding.
yeah, he's hiding. Come on up, Adam. So now, the issues that you're going to be hearing now, again, it's, as Joanna said, is this something that we want to include when these usually are addressed annually, and it's part of other associations that do this as well, but it's worth talking about and having our support behind it. That being said,
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Adam Thomas, Tourism Director for Pasco County. First, I'd like to thank Commissioner Chairman Jack Mariano for storming the Capitol with me during Tourism Day to speak to our legislation about these tourism initiatives. And they are our legislative positions for 2023. First is to stop expansion of the use of the tourist development tax. The industry, as well as our own Pasco County Tourist Development Council, opposes legislation that would expand the use of tourist development tax. Destinations Florida and the industry is against any expansion of the use of the tourist development tax for purposes other than tourism. We saw this last year when a representative filed a bill that would drastically change our business model, as well as Visit Florida, bringing 5% of our own local tourist development tax dollars back to fund Visit Florida. And 75% of that funding that's collected on an annual basis would have to go towards marketing rural counties, also funding, marketing the state's forestry, as well as the state park system, as well as marketing the rural counties as well. So that would actually hurt our business model and the way we effectively market and communicate with our consumers out in the marketplace. Next is,
Can I just say one thing? I was at the Florida League of Cities conference last week. Orange County, Central Florida is really big into doing what you're saying, by the way. It's a major issue over there, and I expect this issue.
it will be at FAC. It is every year.
Yeah, so.
Although you have one county that I think is that does ask if they can do it. It's like you're and everybody speaks up and says, if you start, tweaking it, you're
Right.
going to have that problem down the line. So, go ahead.
secondly, we have funding for Visit Florida. We want to maximize the opportunity for funding for Visit Florida so that Florida tourism industry can create jobs, promote economic growth, keep resident tax base low, and also generate sales tax revenue. Destinations Florida, as well as the industry, supports fully funding Visit Florida to enable DMOs such as ourselves, to maximize our marketing efforts and co-ops. We're seeing at this year that Visit Florida, their budget was raised from $50 million to $75 million, and I can tell you right now, we're actually planning for our biggest co-op marketing buy with Visit Florida. Without them coming on board and co-oping our marketing efforts, we would just be a raindrop in the ocean. So we need Visit Florida, and we need to maximize their funding.
And I'll say the governor did a great job, I thought, leading the way to put that extra money into it, to put the legislature to go that way, and that kind of like squashed the other stuff that was being talked about and put the money in. So I think it is a big thing we push that. That's when we can give him a big attaboy on across the board.
I agree.
And finally is the short-term rental taxation support legislation that codifies full collections and remittance of the tourist development tax by short-term rentals and requires a Department of Revenue number or similar unique property identification number to be included on all short-term rental advertisements.
Anything further with that? Okay, I think you have unanimous support there. No complexity. See that, Stacy? No complexity. Nice and easy.
Poor Steve.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good job.
Next, I'm going to have Sean McGarvey come up.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Sean McGarvey, Director of Libraries. These are two very simple requests. Every year, the state legislature funds the state cooperative grants for libraries to a certain dollar amount. We would just like to request that it be funded at $21.4 million. That is an equalization grant for every $1.82 that the library's operational budget spends. That grant is then divvied out between all the counties and given. That money is then spent specifically to enhance patron services, books, materials, items within the library. It can be used on staffing costs, but this county already covers those things, so we use it to supplement our collection. The second request is that we will be putting in a request for the Wesley Chapel Branch Library for the maximum amount of the state aid for libraries construction grant at $500,000. The last grant we put in was for the Starkey Ranch TLC, which was funded in 2019-2020 at the full amount of $500,000. They have not granted any requests since, but we were hoping that we could advocate for that to put money in the pot in the ranked programs, and we could be one of them.
Very good.
Very simple.
Did, so in Starkey, when we got that 500 grand, when you say we haven't, I don't know if you said we haven't applied for anything more, but others have?
We have not applied for anything more. Wesley Chapel is the newest library we've constructed since Starkey Ranch. This will be our first application since Starkey Ranch, sir.
Okay, but I mean, other counties have done it.
Oh, absolutely, sir. There's 14 to 15 libraries on that list.
Right, okay.
Sean just wants to ensure that we're matching what the feds are giving us, we're leaving nothing on the table as a state.
Okay. And Commissioner Stark, you had that big list with all the different
I do, I'm fixing
nonprofits.
it.
You get to that?
I am gonna
Yeah,
get to
So
it.
she was talking about like nonprofits, like Friends of the Library. They can
Right.
go after different grants or whatever.
I
So if
talked
you
to
wanna-
Sean about this yesterday, but when we're done with these, I will bring this up.
So
But
we-
I'm fixing these.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we
This-
finished
this
up
wasn't
policy
supposed to be
now.
on here.
And we're going into
Thanks, Sean.
our funding request. And I thought before we start bringing up what the organization and the departments presented, and I know Commissioner or Chairman Mariano, you had a specific project you wanted to bring up again, the one that we did last year. We'd had that discussion, Commissioner Starkey, going forward. You know, I think we've always talked, do we all want to be united around bigger projects that impact our county? And hope that might have bigger bang for the buck, and if we're all united on something that might be in the central or you know, in 3 part of the areas. And I think we've heard that discussion. Do we know, but we did not have any projects, I think, that we were ready for prime time. Because all along, when Sean and I tell you, there is no guideline set up in the appropriations process as far as it comes to member projects. How much should they be? How much skin in the game should you have at the county level? So we just give estimates that we hear other counties do, and say anywhere from a 500,000 to 5 million.
I mean, we can give you an idea. If you do a project more than $2 million in what we consider a water project, that is generally leadership driven. And so if you don't have somebody in leadership, that request probably isn't going to happen. That's what we've looked historically. I will say, though, there's only one change. Senator Blazing-Golia has some different ideas on how it should be. He believes that local governments and others should have not ask for a full request, but they should have some money in it. So, you have Senator Blazing-Golia for the first time doing it, and this has been the same sentiment that he has treated as he was a state rep when I've dealt with him for 8 years with Hernando. So I can talk about that more, but I will tell you, the first thing he asks is, have they voted on it and have they approved it all together? And then secondly, how much of every project are they putting in? And he asks that not just for counties, Ralph, he asks it for cities, nonprofits, everybody across the board.
Right.
I don't get that question from, Senator Burgess or Senator Hooper, but I'm just telling you, Senator Ngolia is a little bit different when he supports. So remember, we have 3 senators now that we can go to ask for, to submit appropriations.
Well, and I wanted to talk this discussion too, because I don't know what's the best way to go. I mean, we
Yeah.
put like 5 projects through, I think 1 got done on the small projects. Is that really worth going after? Is there a better approach we can take?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, out in Moffett, we did phenomenally well with big stuff. So should we just be thinking big with our projects and just going that way, as opposed to, and we all want to try to take care of our districts with the
Exactly.
different things that need, but
And I hear that.
I don't know if this is the process to go get that. So I'm listening for some guidance.
I mean, I'll say, and then Ralph, you have a very young legislative delegation right now. Your most elevated person in the legislature right now is Ed Hooper, who's head appropriations chairman. Almost a remainder of all of them. And Senator Blaze is a freshman in the Senate. The others are freshmen in the House. So you have a very young, nobody in leadership of both. Senator Hooper can help us with TID appropriations. I wouldn't recommend us submitting 5, appropriations that are going through this committee. So it's, I just say it's kind of like chess. It's not checkers. It's not one little simple, but I think there's multiple questions and how we can do it. I think the best thing is ask for several items that hit different pots, whether it's a water project, a park, whether it's, fire, whether it's, transportation, difference in those. And also, you can put a $14 million item in there. Those are big items. Some of them get them, but again, I can break it down and probably tell you that the county that got it was the chair of that certain appropriations committee, or it was the speaker of the House or the Senate president that made sure that his local community got it.
So with Senator Hooper with his district, should we look at something big in his district then?
I would look at something, a couple $1 million. I would meet with Senator Hooper too. I think some of these, before we even vote on some of these and put it on there, are getting them to buy into it before we even approve it. And because all of a sudden now they're bought into it, not just us coming to them and asking them to do it. But I like here's 5 projects. What of these 5 are your favorite? Which one are you hearing from your constituents that you think is some of the biggest need? They may think there's a greater need on 54 than you think there's on 52. I'm just mentioning things, but.
Mr. Starkey?
And look, I asked, and I'm sorry, I asked both of you guys and everybody to get me the list of
County by
the
county.
county by county appropriations, and every time I got one, it had the ones, it was the ask, not the ones that were granted, so.
After the veto.
Yeah, after the veto. So FAC went through, and they did this for me, and now they're gonna do it every year. So, I wanna talk about this, about more community ask, but what I wanna say here in going through a lot of these counties is the amount of water projects that do get approved in each county. But they're not all coming from the county. I mean, or they don't say the county next to them, and so but a lot of them are septic to sewer, and a lot of them are mains, and I think we got some water.
Right.
But are there some categories, Sean, that are more advantageous for the county to apply for and are more likely to make it through? Say septic to sewer, since that's
So let me give you an example. You had pulled one from a particular county, and it was in Ben Albritton's district, and it was a $5 million project, and it was for septic to sewer. It was for one of the municipalities, it wasn't for the county.
Yeah.
But that municipality put in $21 million, and they got $5 million from the state. And it was a $30+ million project.
And he's also a future Senate president in
Correct.
12 months. Yeah,
Correct,
so-
but there, just showing that that's a big ticket item that you're gonna probably need, we're gonna have to put a lot of money in toward that. What that figure is, I don't know, but that was, like I said, it was a $30 million project, and it was Punta Gorda put in 21.5 out of that project.
So I had mentioned this to the administrator that, when I was in Washington and I went around with the federal committee and all the different counties came in with me, they sat there and were thanking Senator Rubio and their staff and Senator, the other one, Scott, for all the money they'd sent back for septic to sewer conversions. And I'm sitting there thinking, gosh, we haven't done one in our county. And they're thanking them for all the money they've gotten back. And I am
right.
seeing a lot of septic to sewer
I hear
in
ya.
many counties getting funded. And then we heard Wilton Simpson tell us how he's put some money aside that would help the homeowner on their side of it.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
it seems like the stars are aligned to do some septic
Correct,
to
and
sewers.
if I may
ahead.
interject, to that point, the utility does have money set aside in its budget now to do what I would call preliminary design, to get projects closer to shovel-ready, because right now, all you have are conceptual cost numbers.
Right.
So we'll target those areas, and we will have projects aligned. That may not be this year, but I think septic to sewer is going to continue, especially in the state as water quality becomes more and more important and money becomes more and more available, to be able to do that. So I think we're on that path. I think the original priority were spring sheds and a lot of these other areas in the state and the federal area. So I think we're on that path, Commissioner, and we'll continue that. I think, Sean, my really question back to that is, do you think there are certain pots of money
Yeah, exactly.
that we should really be thinking about more so this year?
TED
The
appropriations.
the silos.
Transportation Economic Development Appropriations. I would put in, probably 2 to 3 projects. Ask, him to put one, because remember, here's the thing.
Hooper's district.
You've got Ed Hooper, who's the future appropriations chairman. Everybody knows it, so he's gonna be getting the things that he wants. I would pick one in Burgess's district, one in Blaze's district, and one in Ed Hooper's district.
Then you're kind of teeing up one of the list of projects that we got, that deal with sidewalks that are
Right.
coming in next to schools, might be good options, and then.
But are those
and
big
then-
enough?
And then go,
Yeah. I mean, I'll look at the amounts. I mean, you're looking at several $1 million on one
We
of them
probably
here.
have $5 million worth of
Right.
sidewalk
Yeah.
projects already.
Because
I
I'm
mean,
thinking
yeah,
of
that's-
these
that's substantial.
$13 million bike overpasses that we, for some reason, in Pasco County, we have to pay for them ourselves, but in the other counties, the state pays for them.
right, I know that, and,
Well, and back to your point, Sean, earlier, I mean, those are projects we have funded, so I mean, if we can offset those
Right,
costs,
you
we
got the
can
money.
Put that
reuse
in
those
the
monies
thing.
differently. So I mean, I think as part of the strategy, we need to decide that. Let me ask you this, Sean.
Yes, sir.
Does it make sense for us to have, I mean, I think you mentioned it here with Senator Angolia, is the project approved and kind of underway? So where
Right.
is it, I always use the term shovel-ready.
Yes, sir.
You know?
Correct.
And is there a match? So should we be focusing on projects that we already have in our capital plan that we are just duly marching down, and then?
Absolutely, for Representative Mongolia, I mean, the higher the match, the more excited he get. But I want to preface this, he also knows that he can submit it, but anything we put in for TED appropriations, they're not going to have to put any political capital out. Senator Ed Hooper is. So that's why yes on what you're just asking specifically with him, but also knowing anything we're putting on is not a burden or political capital on the other 2 state senators, it's on Ed Hooper is going through his. So putting one in each of them doesn't put all 3 through his district, he's giving something to the others. I would like, again, I said earlier about looking at then maybe a couple other water projects, maybe there's something for parks, maybe it's something for fire, but different areas, 3 different pots, one guy that's in leadership, we have a good path and strategy.
I've got an idea for you. This morning, we're on a phone call with staff looking at septic and sewer. And thank you, Mike, for putting money in the budget to actually have it. We're going to study it to go forward with the grants coming up. And the conversation was about water projects. One was about Sea Pines, one was about Elfers, and the other was Atlanta Lakes. So you got 2 out of your 3 senators there. Actually, 3 senators should be covered, different districts that are right in there. The Sea Pines one, we've spent, I'll say, over $8 million with Swift Mud doing a project in there to fix the flooding. Now, they've wanted septic to sewer conversion for a long time, but we wouldn't do it because until we had the flooding fixed, it didn't make sense to fix,
Right.
bring the sewer in. And the roads are terrible up there, so we're gonna do the roads eventually as well, but not until the drainage is fixed as well. So that's a project, we got a ton of matching monies in that project.
Yeah, and I support that project.
Yeah.
And that's in Blaze's district.
Yes, yeah, perfect and Blaze.
And isn't that where they have to keep closing the beach for contamination?
Well,
Is that near there?
it's said that up in that area, it's right downstream. So they say that when that gets heavily flooded, there's a farm that's there that may take the water, that pushes it down further. And coincidentally, a lot of time when that does happen, the water goes down there. DEP, we're actually doing fecal studies, et cetera, now with that whole area. And we've spent our money working with DEP to go study that area. And Colleen's been very well versed in that and helpful to make all that happen. But as that goes studied, that can tie into, again, water quality as well as matching funds like you're talking about. Elfers is a very low-income area, which right
It's
in the middle
Elfers
of.
Parkway you're talking about? Elfers Parkway?
If it's- if
That's
what
where
this
we
place, okay.
got the CDBG DR money to buy out some houses.
So wherever that septic sewer project is, I'm not sure exactly, but that is directly in Hooper's district as well. That could tie to that. And the one in Land O'Lakes, I got to think, has got to be close to Danny's.
But should we do 3 or should we do 1?
Well, here's the thing, all 3, we've got basic information to take a step forward, and I think by time session comes, especially if we had
I want to
a,
hear them say what we should do.
well, I'll tell you what, I'll tell you what, is Angela still here?
And, you know, Mike mentioned it, and I think we were talking about that, so be cognizant of the fact when we.
All right, so I've got the expert right here who's on the line with us today.
Okay.
So if you would, talk about the 3 septic to sewer projects and where they actually are and if we could submit them all together as one project, hitting 3 Senate districts.
Sure thing, Commissioner. So we've requested in your 5-year capital improvement project, $2 million in FY '24 and $2 million in FY '25 to start the design for 2 specific projects. One is Sea Pines, that would be the first one, and the other one is Elfers. Now, we picked those 2 because a few years ago, we hired a consultant to look at all the different parts of the county, and there were 4 areas identified: Sea Pines, Elfers, Weeki Wachee, and Hillsborough River basins. And out of each one, the top 4, the top one in each group was identified as a priority project, Sea Pines being one of them. Our intent is to start the design and possibly complete the design for Sea Pines in the next year and a half. And we've also, by this time next week, will have submitted grant applications to the state for I believe they're resiliency grants for Sea Pines and Elfers as well. Our intent is to submit design grant applications one year, followed by construction grant applications the following year, and then essentially just recreate that process from there on so that we always have in the process some grant money available for design and then followed up by construction and then just build on that program. And that's being administered by your.
Now, is that grant or appropriation? And that's one of the things
So
that
then
I'm
go
talking
to,
about here.
so now talking about appropriations, it's better to wait for to go after construction dollars rather than design. So once you have that design done, let's say on a road project, you have the right-of-way done, and then you're ready for the construction, that's when you want to go. That's what we consider shovel-ready when we talk about it. And that's what the legislators say, you know, is a shovel-ready. They want construction.
So they're not ready, so those septic to sewer projects are not ready yet?
Not yet, no. He said they're just still in the designing and planning.
So are you going to recommend that we wait 1 year?
Yes, because you said maybe 25, it will be ready for the 25. So we're going into 24, 25 with the state in January. So it'll be 25, 26 that we could go after in the legislature for 25 for funding for construction.
Yes, because we get reimbursed in arrears. So the grant that we're applying for now would be available July 1 of 2024 for the state's FY '25 cycle. So we're starting 1 year ahead of time, and then we'll just create a program that just constantly asks for design and construction grants to just keep that process rolling.
And that would probably, I mean, we could probably have some skin in the game toward that, or programs in it. But that could be a larger project and kind of achieve these goals that you're all talking about and wanting to go after.
But I want you this, if you, let's focus to Sea Pines just for a second. If you focus on that project right now, literally been working in that area for 19 years trying to fix that flooding thing, and between plating and other things up there, it's been difficult, but we finally have it where we got the last pieces of property, which we've signed off on, everything we need, the whole plan's together. We're gonna fix that drainage now. Chelsea Apartments coming from above is coming in. They gave us 8.5 acres of land. I've got so much matching money right now that if you wanted to look at that type of thing, especially in Blaze's district, we've spent a lot of money. We've done a lot of things, spent a lot of time. I think it's a great time to ask for the design money too. And if they don't give it to us, maybe it just leads up to where we're teed up for the next time. So I-
No, if you get
If you get it vetoed,
you don't,
you
you
get
can't
bumped.
Go
ask.
ask the next year.
Well,
Sean,
then
what do you
maybe
think?
not.
I called up Commissioner Starkey, we went through every single project that was vetoed in Pasco, Hernando, and Citrus in the Tampa Bay area.
Okay.
And
Can't bring it back.
75% of the projects that were vetoed this year were vetoed last year,
Yep.
number one.
Yep.
Just think of that, and that number
We
was
don't wanna
there,
get in that
every
position.
single project. City of Brooksville, Inverness, I went down to all those other municipalities and school boards. Again, looking at a strategy, and I mean, that's why you all are doing this. I think this is, honestly, this is great. I hope we continue to do this in years moving forward, because it gives us more, the old adage, more than one way to skin a cat.
Right.
And I think you're in a good position if you do multiple, and I say multiple, I'm looking at like three projects, one for each senator for TED appropriations, one or two for water. You know, it wouldn't even hurt to do one with Senator, ask Ed to do, Senator Ed Hooper to do two projects, one water project and others, because you know other projects that he's had, he's gonna have leverage to get projects. But unfortunately, yours is in Senator Ngolia's out, and you either do one with him and Senator Ngolia, and one with him, and one with Senator Burgess.
We definitely want to spread the wealth with the
Right.
county. with
And I
our
keep saying east-west, because again, I
Right.
don't wanna see, I think it's wise to spread it
Yeah.
across everybody for
So
asks.
then we're talking like 1, 2, at the most 3 projects. We're not talking per commissioner's district. And when I think of it, and when you're dealing with other counties, Hillsborough and Pinellas do not do it by commissioner.
Right.
They do 1 or 2 projects every year.
They only submit one or two?
That's correct. They do not do it by commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you could probably go pretty much in any county, and it's not 5 or 7.
Commissioner Starkey's going right to the list. Watch out, Ralph.
But you can do that, but
Yeah.
now
Get
the
money
member
out of that.
projects are different. Member projects, you're talking
Right.
municipality projects, the
Well, that's what we're gonna talk
nonprofits.
about, and that's why I gave that to our
Correct.
council member.
That's
back
what I'm saying, but it's not per commissioner.
Right. I do think you could do a couple transportation projects and even some water projects.
So what do
in
we
there.
think
Two different
about,
pots.
So I'm teeing up then.
rangeland
3 and 2.
or the bike ped overpass at 54 and Suncoast that's already in engineering?
Those projects are in design,
Yeah,
and they're currently, I think, penny funded is
yeah,
where
but
those-
couldn't we use that penny for something else if we
Most-
got some
I
state
don't know,
money?
Tracy, we probably could nod yes or no.
Can I tee her up and bring her up then and start talking about the
What if you
projects?
use part of that penny for
Exactly,
that, and then
exactly.
get the other part
We'll
from the
say-
state?
Even if we got half of that funded by the state, we'd be in
Yeah.
good shape. Because they're,
That will relieve some money you got. in
You
the-
want to address that? And
Oh.
then we'll go into the projects.
I know it was
Let's
old
have-
penny money,
Okay.
but
but we can use it on another.
The current penny, we do have a current penny list, and the sidewalks that are on the list that we gave you would be future penny projects. But we're looking at
What sidewalk list?
schools are still having
Do you have
issues, so we proposed,
But to her question though, on the trail issue.
I'm sorry, can you tell me the question again?
So the residents of Pasco County we've saved penny for Pasco money from the first time to pay for the overpasses at 54 in the Suncoast and 52 in the Suncoast. And they're they're almost ready for construction. So, is anyone here from engineering?
that's
Or-
Tracy.
Oh, you, so do you know how much those are? They're 20,000, 20 million?
10, 15 million, yeah.
Yes.
How much?
10+ million each, about
Yeah,
10
easy.
million, yeah.
So if we were asked the state to do,
So if we did some
Half.
offset and asked the state for a project, as a bigger project, could we?
then
you were gonna
divert
say-
that 10 million, that if they did half of each one, they paid for the ones in Hernando and Citrus 100%. But
They did.
if they if we got half of ours paid, we could divert that 10 million to do sidewalks and lots of other penny projects, right?
I'm sorry to speak up. It just sounds a little bit sexier for sidewalks than it does bike paths. I'm just mentioning, I mean, you know, I mean, I'm
But
not saying
we're-
not
we're
to go
having
for
people
it.
killed-
But if you're able
killed at
to,
these
but I'm saying, but
intersections.
if you're able to fund these type of paths and then able to fund that, I'm just,
Well, I'd
again, when
rather
I go
get
to the
10 million than
legislature.
1 million.
It's, me talking
all.
about bike, you know, sidewalks versus bike
Yeah.
paths.
But let's think
But
of
I'm not
this.
saying it's not, I'm just,
I mean, these people are traversing back and forth,
Yes,
so
sir.
it gets them to a park from one way to the other. It continues with a great trail that runs down to the south and north of us.
That's the
And I
coast to
think
coast,
you got the leverage to say, look, you funded,
don't have that
the
list.
state funded the other two.
Right.
Up in Hernando and Citrus.
I would have to look on how they funded it. Was it in appropriations or?
They put it into the construction cost of the Suncoast.
No, they did it different from us.
Yeah, they did it different, yeah.
No, they did.
They
So,
did.
so I mean, so
Yeah.
we
We
get the
didn't
leverage.
get treated
I don't care
the
how
same.
it gets paid for, but as far as the state was responsible for it, getting taken care of.
Okay.
Now we've got matching funds, which Blaze will like. And now you've got construction documents ready to go.
Yeah.
And we just had,
Construction slated for 25, they were talking about the overpass.
so you got construction documents ready to go. You want to talk about shovel ready, here you go.
And does it help connect to Hernando? Because if you're working with Blaze, any of that up there? Of
course it does.
Yeah,
Sure, of course it does.
Yeah, that trail
I'm being
goes to
funny, but
Hernando.
I knew the answer, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't hurt. Then I would suggest doing maybe one of those and a bike path, and a sidewalk.
Sidewalk
Right,
projects.
not,
Are any of these in Blazes?
well, again, you want to do one in
Shady
Blaze,
Hills?
you want
Those are by-
to do
by
one in Blaze or Danny Burgess's, and you definitely want to do one in Ed Hooper's district. You want to do some type of transportation, economics.
That's in Hoopers.
Should you do them together, going 50, looking for the 50-50 match? Or put them together or keep them separate? Two separate ones? Okay.
Two
So
different
let's do
projects. You have one
52 and
sidewalk,
54,
one-
just do them
Well,
separate.
let me, and I'm throwing that one out there, but let me back up and ask the administrator for a second. What is the list of shovel-ready transportation projects in Hoopers District?
I mean, I don't know if we have that off the top of our heads.
Besides the overpass?
But I think we can provide the
Rangeland?
board.
No.
No, that's under study right now.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I think we can provide the board with a list of projects that we either have currently slated in design, that will be ready to go to construction, and we have a number of those. And certainly, you know, these districts traverse the county, so they'll be in
Right.
someone's district, and we can certainly balance that out. If it's the board priority, it's important for me to know if the board's priority is sidewalks and these, you know, pedestrian, bike-type facilities, then I think we can certainly come up with a list of things that we have funded. And then with those, again, we provide a match, and there's an offset savings that we can go and reinvest into other, probably similar type projects. Because we have a very long list of sidewalk projects, signalization projects. There's a lot of transportation safety needs that we have out there that we certainly will have no trouble providing funding for. I think Carl wants to add something to the conversation.
I would like to encourage any transportation-related project that we wish to pursue funding, make it expressly stated that it is coming from general revenue and not the Transportation Trust Fund.
Yes.
I just wanted to remind
You know,
everyone
that's-
that, please.
Thank you
That's
for bringing
vitally
that up, by the
important.
way. You just made our job a lot easier.
Yes.
And Carl will explain why that's important.
Any funds that come from the Transportation Trust Fund that are later vetoed by the governor's pen are removed from the trust fund budget overall. That money is just simply gone, and they take it out of our hide, if you will.
That's right.
In terms of what they're going to spend in Pasco County. But if it's from general revenue, no harm, no foul, we still get our money. And DOT has been exceptionally generous with us in
I
the
agree.
last 2 years.
Yes, they have.
I do not want to damage that relationship.
That's right.
Thank you for mentioning.
Can I go back to
Or
this?
Secretary Gwen will,
Yeah.
give you an earful.
Yes.
Going back to this idea of getting money for the two overpasses, one's in your district and one's in mine, that are shovel-ready and we have the money. If we could get, and if we told the narrative that we would take the 10 million that we would save and we would put that into sidewalks, it's kind of a win for everybody. And it's more than this whole list, which is 5 million. We could do $10 million worth of sidewalks. And we could pledge that the money goes to sidewalks.
And we could do it cheaper, because wouldn't be subject to Harris Bacon.
I just want to listen to you guys if you think that's a good
Again, I'm just saying, I think be reasonable with your ask, the old pigs get, fed, hogs get slaughtered
Yeah.
type thing. We're gonna have Senator Hooper as an appropriations chairman that lives in Pasco County off of Trinity Boulevard. He is gonna be very, very kind to us for the next 2 years while he's appropriations chairman. So I just say that in consideration, let's be.
Is that too much? Two projects?
Yeah, no, I don't,
5 million
listen,
each?
I mean, if you're asking to do a $10 or $13 million project, that's big. If you're saying that let's ask for a $5 million project and do another one for 3 and 2 and
could
ten.
do one each year.
Remember, anything that he has to give up for his county, I mean, there's other things that he has to give up with that other committee chair over in the Senate. They know, I mean, in the House, they know he's trying to get these projects here and he has to give pots of his budget to them. So it's all a negotiation.
So if we asked for one, and my understanding is the 52 one is good, probably ready to go before the 54 one, because they're still in design at 54. And Suncoast, so if we ask, is that his district? Or will that matter? Is 52 in the Suncoast?
No, it won't matter.
Okay,
I would just, again, I would just, if you're gonna ask for money from his pot, at least do one
Fine.
project from his.
Commissioner, I think with this feedback, I think we can
Thank
kind of
you.
tailor a package.
Okay,
that we
all right,
can-
well,
we
let's
can
do
And I'd
that.
also
bring
challenge, I think, if you all would allow us, when you get that list put
Yeah.
together, let us meet very quickly with Senator Hooper
Yeah.
and then get back with you on it. And we can probably give you information very quickly as soon as you get that list together. So,
And the same for water projects across the
Right.
county.
Well, and let me ask this too, this water projects, and if I may, given Senator Hooper's background, are there any public safety projects that we may
That's why I
want to
mentioned
consider?
fire a couple times.
Where are we with that?
I mean, there-
JJ?
I'll
Can I
ask
just say,
Okay.
there's one of the new fire
Plus
stations
there's a
getting
jail.
built. We pay 100% of the fire stations. If we can get a 20% match, that's $2 million that we can, the fire stations are now $9 million.
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
And we fund those 100% out of the jail bond, so that would be.
You tell us.
So only a very few fire stations usually get funded in that budget
Yes, I haven't
item
seen
in
many.
there. And so getting that item any higher than 2 million is probably much, but, anything 2 million and under is,
But I'm just asking for like a 20% match,
Right.
or, I mean, we have 2 projects, so we'll.
I mean, again, you ask for 20, if they give you, ask for 2 million, if they give you $1 million towards the fire station, that's still great, so.
When I see the fire stations getting funded, they're in small counties.
Dude,
Yes.
Okay, and then if I can.
There's a
real quick.
rule, there's a grant, there's money set aside for rural or volunteer fire departments.
Right, but
in the
it's
state.
generally the governor, usually when you see those being vetoed, those are the governor. The governor has an internal rule that he believes that those funds should go to rural counties who are fiscally restricted.
Constrained, yeah.
In statute. But you can still ask for it.
Well, I think the approach where we're hearing is, let's go focus on Hooper's District number 1. Let's go look at what we have with Blaze. Let's go look at all of them, and as we set them up, let's forget the commission lines from now on.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And let's just go look, what can each one of them put something on for their own district so they can say,
Do it by
I brought something
senators.
back to my area.
Thank you.
So I think if we, I think we
Well,
take that
I think we can
approach.
put that list together with your staff very quickly and
Yep.
and meet with the delegation.
I had one more idea I wanted to throw out there.
Go ahead.
That I thought would be good for the county, and, maybe this isn't a good idea since we've gone down this path, but, I think our county could use an aquatic center. And, I know Wilton had tried to help get one,
Correct.
somewhere in the center of the county, and I'm still in support of that idea, somewhere in the center of the county or wherever. It is very high up on the tourism list, I think Adam's here. And it also helps all our school districts that don't have aquatic facilities. And there's a long line at the few that we do have, because I know my daughter used to dive at River Ridge, and trying to get pool time in the afternoon or before school, it was very, very difficult, so. So I don't know if that's
So-
something that's an idea.
So real quickly, I'll say on that one, I like the way you're thinking. And those types of approaches, you can then say, if it impacts the school, the county, a partnership.
Yeah.
If you have a developer, landowner that's willing to give up land, that could go for something that large. I think when we were talking, let's go ahead and continue to talk about aquatics. The parks can use but you need an Olympic-sized pool that you can use for events.
Yeah, I'm talking
Am I
like the
correct,
Long
Adam?
Center.
Yeah, so you don't want like a regular county pool.
No.
You want a big pool. So that's something I think we're planning on, but there's a lot of facets to that. And again, we're not ready for prime time for that kind of thing, but you're thinking right. Again, rather than member-oriented projects, bigger projects. I'll stop there.
Yeah, and Commissioner, I think too, we also need to consider operational costs of those facilities
Right.
too. Again, like where we're thinking, but I think that would be something we need to put as in a priority on our own capital plan first, because it sounds like, even if we were to have multiple participants in it,
There's a lot of-
we may be able to craft a more hybrid type solution and then pull in the, state or federal money as a
Right.
sweetener.
Right.
Well, I, since we have sunshine, I couldn't mention that to my
Right.
fellow board members, but I do think that is something that is lacking in the county, and we should discuss it. Maybe it's not something for this year, but what should be on our radar for the near future.
You know, one time Lou Friedland was actually up at SunWest, and I guess he's done long-distance swimming.
Mm.
And he said that northern part of that lake would be ideal for that long-distance swimming that they travel around the state for.
Oh, interesting. Well, but usually at a swim meet, you've got a lot of different events going on. You have platform diving and lots of things going on. But,
And I want to stick to the time. There were some issues that we weren't able to address. I did go ahead and pass out, when we were looking at individual projects, there are some fire rescue projects in there as well. But we'll continue this discussion to get it ready for the September 5th date, so we can kind of hone in and clean up our list.
wait.
Go
Don't
ahead.
leave, Councilwoman. Come back in. Sorry, I'll say this really quickly. And the reason I handed this to you, and if you could, and I didn't know if there's any other elected officials here. But if you, and Ralph taught me this yesterday or the day before, I never knew this, on appropriations. If you look at these and you don't see any numbers on the end of them, like Senate form or House form, that means it came from a grant. And,
Or a pot of money like the transportation.
well, I'm not, don't
Yeah.
look at the transportation
Yeah.
workforce program.
Just saying.
But everything else. And if you look, I had my staff count these up. For example, Brevard had 86 projects granted. And you go through, well, I'll do ours last. Polk, and I had them look at counties near to us in population, 78 granted. And I'm not doing the ask versus granted, because there's political reasons why things get vetoed, and that's not what this discussion is about. Sarasota, 81 granted. And I think I have one more. Volusia, 68 granted. Pasco, we had 39 granted. We didn't ask for, our citizens, our nonprofits, our cities did not put enough in. So we would ask that you guys start asking for some money. And I'm sure you have projects, I'm thinking the Grand Boulevard Trail or the wastewater treatment plant that's on the water that should be moved off the water. Every municipality in Pasco should be asking for something, and many of our nonprofits, because these asks come from all kinds of entities, and if it's a grant funded, Chris Browse told me that money's sitting there just waiting to go out, and they don't get vetoed. And so let's just bring as much as we can back, even if it's $25,000. Let's go for it. So let's get all our nonprofits to be thinking about asking for money. How do they do that, Sean?
Sorry, just put it.
Sorry. Ralph,
Hang on that thought for, hang on that for
how does that happen for someone who's never?
Hang on that thought for a second.
Go ahead.
Newport Richie, Councilman,
Yes.
Councilwoman Kelly Miller said, come on up, Kelly, and why don't you tell us some of the things you guys are thinking about doing that maybe we can even partner with?
Yeah.
So being unprepared, I don't have,
Sorry to do that
Hey,
to
but
you.
we're glad you're here.
But we do have a lot of projects that we're working on, and the Grand Boulevard is one of them. The multi-use path coming through Grand Boulevard. We also have the stormwater issues, huge stormwater issues with the plant over there on Green Key Road. That's a big one for us too. We have a lot going on downtown, but we have all of those issues that we need to fix. And we are meeting, and we are going to be talking about requesting more funds than we have in the past, for sure.
Excellent.
And Kelly, I was going to say, and I'm glad you mentioned that plant, because we jointly own it with the city, and some of the increases they want to do as far as releasing water into the canals, I get calls all the time on, what are you doing, we got to stop that. The bacteria, the fish kill, the wildlife kill that's out there is very strong. There is a ton of money out there for wastewater treatment plants. So I would love if you would push that forward. That's right in Hooper's district as well. That would be something we could partner with real easy and then uniformly go up there. And I think we got a great chance to get that funded to move that away in a safer, better way.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things we're looking
Okay.
at, is being able to partner and get some of these things done a little bit easier and a little bit quicker.
We're 40% with you in that plan, so.
Exactly.
And when you go up and talk to the legislators, when we go up, we should each endorse and support each
Each
other's
other's.
projects. And we want to get the chambers involved.
Yes.
And Rotaries and all other groups to get behind the projects that benefit citizens of Pasco County.
Yeah, and I actually had a conversation with a couple of our charitable organizations too, in putting in some requests, so,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll talk about that too.
And I just want to say, when you read off some of those counties, just to reiterate, I mean, Pasco County has very few cities, Brevard and then Pinellas,
Yeah.
they have a lot more cities, so a lot of requests.
So we need our 6 cities.
Yeah, we need our municipalities to step up to
Yeah,
plate.
we have to
Yeah,
all,
I
we
mean,
just have to all get together and
Yeah,
work on it together, and like you said, help push each other, so.
But both the state and federal delegation are there to help. That's their constituency.
Yep, we're on it this year.
All right,
Thank you.
great.
And
Thanks for
Fort
being
Richard,
there.
too. I don't know if they're here.
I think I'm the only one here.
Well, one thing I'd like to add is, if we're doing projects and we're getting monies, whether it's a municipality or if it's one of our districts or wherever, as a group, we need to be pushing to get that money spent, construction on those roads and things, because we've got some on the east side that they've gotten the money, but nothing's happened.
Oh.
I mean, it was just recently, they went from, on design, from 30% to 60, and they've had the money for 4 years.
Yeah, we have some big road projects
that's
too. I mean, we
not
just
good.
started on River Road, so we have a lot of big
Yeah.
road projects
So we need to
too.
push together, I think, to get those all finished if we can.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Well,
We're
are
going
we
to pause
done?
for a minute?
Okay.
Just 1 minute. That's,
All
our
right, let's
libraries
pause
are
just for a
very
minute.
efficient with their money. We have
Yes.
to change the
Okay.
tape, actually.
All right.
So we'll pause. Go ahead, Sean.
All right, so again, I'd like to just say that I love this setup. I'm glad we're doing this meeting. The closeness, I think, is great, so as much as it's a little extra work, I think it's helped the dialogue quite a bit in the presentations. So I want to definitely keep with this strategy. Last year with the runaround back and forth, I think this full dialogue makes it so much easier.
It does.
So,
It does.
great planning.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay.
Anything else for me?
No, but
Oh,
again,
you're late.
Kelly,
I
thank
think
you
so.
very much for coming.
Thank you.
We
Thanks,
appreciate
Kelly.
it. Thank you.
See you, Kelly.
Your call.
Let me just kind of like lay out kind of what I'm hearing, what I'm think I'm seeing.
Perfect.
Is, and I think that the 5 commissioners, I think we clearly want what's best for the county, however it plays out. Wherever it goes, it goes. We just want to be more effective with our ask every step of the way. And if you guys can lay out, you can either team up with us with Hooper and Blaze, et cetera, however you think we need to do, but let's go look at those projects with staff, kind of like tee it up quick, say, we're good with this, we like this, we like this. What do you like to our representative, and then
Yeah.
kind of go that way.
September
Let's let them lead the way. We'll
Six,
kind of like,
Absolutely.
here's the groundwork, here's the talk, and what do you think works better that you can go and get through for us to make it fly?
I'll say it very simply, I think by doing this, you've taken those steps in the right direction. that you're
Yes.
going to do,
Yes.
100%.
Okay. All right, Mr. Carbella.
So I guess, yeah, thank you for the kind words. All credit to the team that's here and this team up here that kind of got all this set up. So thank you for really handling that. Yeah.
Yes, my ADD just kicked in.
Commissioner Stark.
I had
yeah.
2 things that I wanted to bring up about possibly policy stuff. And one,
Sure.
I think we said if FAC is going to take it up, we're not going to push
Or
it.
statewide, or, yeah.
But I want to try again for the anonymous code.
Correct.
I have a constituent, I've had quite a few, who've been beaten up by their neighbors. One was in the hospital, 18 stitches. So, I think this is a bad idea, and Sean, I know it's some senator who's a builder.
Yeah, who was it that was getting it? It was a senator that was blocking us because he was.
He's
Yeah.
in Alachua County, and that's,
Right.
we'll just go leave it at
Is
that.
he-
Perry? Perry?
Yeah.
Is he still in?
Yes, yes. But I have had that discussion with one of our own legislators that is receptive to it. We could probably go talk with him on a separate note. Don't look at it as repealing, but the suggestion that he was comfortable with is that a citizen could contact their commissioners.
Or their
And-
county?
No, because then you're just basically.
I get beat up.
Basically, you're repealing then the law by saying, go to the county. But if they go
Okay.
to their commissioner, you don't have to take
Okay.
their name
And
and
I've-
address. You just find
And I've
out
done that
where the
for years.
location of the
Yeah.
complaint is, and that's how it's done.
Okay,
That
well,
would be a
for next year, that'd
possibility.
be okay, then the
That's
year
right.
after that.
And it's gonna be on a policy
Carries
at
out.
FAC, I can tell you
Yeah.
that, even though they're
Okay.
there every year.
The other one has to do with third-party inspections, and we've got, we've got someone right here with Terry who's living this. Is Rob Marin here? Okay,
Right.
so, and I don't even know how up to speed Rob Marin is on this, but we have quite a few homes that have been built that have mold.
Yeah, go
And
on.
because they have been inspected by a third-party provider,
Yep, he's gonna tell us.
there is nothing we can do.
Right.
And it's so sad because some of these people, they know that their house is gonna have mold, they don't wanna close, and they're being told if you don't close, then you lose your deposit, and they go in, they have mold, they have to move out and go stay in a hotel.
Right.
And sadly, even kind of knowing this a little bit, Mr. Pito's got a house that has mold in it. And that was inspected by a third-party provider, nothing we can do.
Yeah,
So-
and we've had that encounter with some of our
And it's in
legislators.
waters-
The constituents are calling them.
Yeah.
New build, putting in HVACs. So it is a discussion, and the only thing we as a county can do on that is tell them if they are licensed with the state, is that
Yeah,
correct?
our JP Murphy Building Construction Services with Ramon Blanco, Building Construction Services as well. Our answer is, and yes, we have gotten a handful through our legislators, is that they are treated as licensed professionals just as our building officials are. And if it has gone through the private provider process, their recourse is through DBPR and making complaints about that licensure in a civil matter. We
Yeah.
have no oversight once, particularly after it's been CO'd.
But if we see the building plan and we see that it's under vented, the AC unit may be too small, we can't step in and make comments on defects that our staff sees?
The limitation on plan review, we cannot go back and do plan review or inspection like for like. That's specifically in statute, but we can audit. So to the extent that we are allowed to audit a private provider up to 4 times a month. Now, granted, there's not a whole lot of quantity of private providers, so we're sort of limited based on the volume of homes that are being built, the ability to go in and do those individualized audits. But in terms of doing plan review, we cannot do plan review after the private provider has done plan review.
Well, so we have to tell them, sorry, this is a civil suit, and I tell you, our constituents don't like it.
Yeah, and that's what the legislators have to tell them, and so I think they're hearing it loud and clear, and you're probably gonna see that get tweaked.
Commissioner
They're
Oakley.
gonna address it.
Well, it should be tweaked, because I think some of them are actually using that, so they avoid our county inspectors from seeing what's going on. I think it's very important that we know that the thing is being built right,
Yeah.
and they're being looked after. I know a gentleman that I guarantee you, everything he did in the past was done without permits, so I worry about what they're doing, and they got a third-party inspector. They're paying them, maybe they're paying them extra, so they don't have to, they can cut corners and not do the right thing. But
And it's out of our hands.
it's just a problem.
Yeah, so going back to where we were, that really might not be the issue that we want to be the one to lead the charge. We're hoping that the association, the legislatures on their own will just say, yeah, we're hearing it loud and clear, which I put that bug in the ear of that representative and said, if you wish to change the legislation, we are happy to work with you with the knowledge that we've had on that. But it's definitely going to have to, I think, be a statewide effort rather than us being the one to lead the charge. But they're seeing it more and more. And they're,
Maybe we can bring that at FAC.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It is,
Yeah, be very important.
When you have a developer, brand new built home, perhaps offering the opportunity for the homeowner to make a selection of private provider versus the local county building department to do the inspections, because our homeowners don't have an option currently.
Yeah.
okay.
They don't know until it's too late.
Yeah.
Great idea.
After they've CO'd and they've closed on the home.
Kind of like
that.
maybe an
Yeah.
extra form, disclosure form, Sean. Maybe like an extra disclosure form to say, if you're going to go with a private provider, keep in mind the county cannot go back
Right.
and help you after the fact.
Something like that would be great. Yeah,
Little notice.
that could be an easy fix.
Well, I think, but
Go ahead.
your
Come to legal
department
side.
head's comment is, right now, it's the builder's choice, not the homeowner.
Right.
Yeah.
So even if we provided a disclosure, they're not really
It's after the
the
fact anyway.
one, they're, well,
When they sign a contract, I guess.
when they sign a contract, they've locked themselves into using a private provider of the builder's choice. It's not like they say, well, we can get our home built faster by using a private provider. They're not even involved in the discussion.
But if the legislature said, the developer, you're gonna have to show them the option and say, with us, you're doing private.
You'd have to change the statute to say that the consumer must be given that choice
Right.
of picking.
That's what he
local-
was suggesting.
local build- Right.
And I think that would be one that you could say is doable. Now, with the developers like that, no, but the consumer
Yeah.
and their constituents would. So, we hear you loud and clear on that one. Thank you.
Okay, I'm done.
This is definitely not a Pasco County issue. This is a all county, all Florida issue.
Amen. Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Oh,
He
so,
was saying.
Now,
Thank you.
now for the landing.
Now for the landing, and Ralph, you may have some follow-up housekeeping items, but I think we've gotten enough information here on policy. I think we can pull something together and craft a capital, project type assessment based on the various pods, Senate districts, et cetera. I'd like to maybe come back to the board. We wanted to bring this list back and have the board codify it on September 5th. I think a regular item where we can just kind of rehash and review would be appropriate, and we can discuss that on September 5th if that's good with the board members, at least here. So,
That's a
Be good.
good approach.
And so then, talking about housekeeping, the delegation has not set a date yet for their delegation meeting. They are now in October, they're looking at, which brings me to, I heard you loud and clear, commissioners, that you also wanted the possibility of, as we've created this workshop, to do a joint legislative workshop with our state delegation.
That's what I thought this was.
And our federal.
this is the first step, so.
So this is this was the first step. So I'm running into problems by the dates that I
Yeah.
went out. We were looking at the end of September to try to do that. Only got back some response from 1 to 4 out of 7 of our delegation members. 2 would not be able to participate. 2 did. So I wasn't getting good feedback. So now the next one I'm looking at would be at the end of October, because there's 3 weeks of October that they're doing committee meetings. That being said,
Are they in November at all? Are there any in November?
yeah, there are committee meetings.
I
Yes.
haven't looked at November.
Oh, have we? We haven't started yet to
Okay.
try to get them there to consider. But there's 3 in committee weeks. There's 3 in October, 2 in November, and 2 in December. And then we're going to start looking at dates. They're going to start coming down on them and saying, you got to have your bill submissions in, and you're going to have to do your appropriations in by a certain date. They haven't set the gauntlet yet of when that is. The House has released their new form. The Senate has not. So once we start, teeing up that, we got to go get sponsors for any legislation and definitely our funding. But where I guess I'm going with that, do we continue on?
I think what Ralph's saying, it has been a challenge to get a date. It has been a challenge just to get a date, to get the delegation to have a delegation meeting. I'm just,
So,
they've
all right,
changed
so,
that
so,
4 times.
so let's look at a different approach then. Maybe it is gonna be a Tallahassee trip when they're all up there. We do something later at night, when they're down for business, or in the morning before they go. We take that block of an hour at a time, we just go up to there, at their place, while they're in there, while they're up there, so we know we're gonna get them all.
And it may be a good thing, because you're gonna get to speak to them at the delegation meeting. Yes, it's only for a few minutes, but we're gonna see your 50,000-foot level, and maybe in the middle of session, Ralph, we can talk about things that we know are actually being filed at that time, and what we oppose and what we support.
Does this stop us from going to the legislators and getting sponsors? No.
No.
So we can work on that, and so if you could just give me the okay that we maybe work on that for next year for that joint. The federal is gonna be different. I'm gonna be shooting for October. You're only talking 4, but we'll probably only get 2, and then the staff from all of them.
Okay.
Yeah, and Commissioner Stark, I was thinking the same thing. We're gonna have everybody here
Yeah.
tonight too, so.
Yeah.
But I like this
It would've been
preliminary way.
nice.
This was a good way to do it, though.
I don't
This
I
know.
wanna
allows,
stick-
this allows the board to have a discussion.
Oh, yeah, no,
Have a
this
good
is
But I
this
think
is the way
Gary
to do
Brad,
it.
Ed Hooper would not have been happy that his name was called out
No.
42 times. but
This
that
is a great way to do it. I like the setup, I like the structural
great.
setup of everything. I think it was a great way to go about it, so I think if we can't do the delegation meeting like we wanted to with everybody in one room down here in Pasco.
Yep.
I don't think there's anything wrong with just going up there and just picking the time to go up there as well, so that's not a problem.
so when I was driving here from my AmSkills board meeting, Brad Yeager called me, and I said, "Oh, I'm on my way. I'm almost there." And he said, "To where?" And I said, "To our legislative meeting." And he said, "What meeting?" I said, "What?"
I wonder why he called me 7 times.
He said, that's why. He said, "I just landed from Milwaukee. It wasn't on my calendar." And I said, "Oh, my goodness." And I said, "Well, just get in your car. You'll only be 45 minutes late." And he said, "I'm in shorts and a t-shirt." I said, "Doesn't matter. It's better you're there than you're, dressed appropriately."
Too funny.
Yeah.
I thought, yeah,
Then I found out it was just us.
She called him back.
Yeah.
Anyway, so great setup.
He found out.
If I can, there is one that has come through my office, policy matter that the Florida Association of County Attorneys is working on, that has nothing to do with public records,
no. but-
on PACE.
And I've emailed you on this one. Some of you have said this is okay. This is the FAC is wanting the counties to go ahead and let us know that we support it, so they can, when we go to the meeting next month, it'll have every county listed.
Well-
And this is the one that
Yeah.
Senator Fasano, has been fighting on. I've teed it up. They've gotten an email. I've heard from some of them, but I haven't heard from all of you. So if you agree, then I will be sending an email to FAC saying our county as well supports the legislation being proposed.
Yeah,
Now,
Quick question, if I could.
Sure.
Yeah.
What does our tax collector Fasano think about it?
Oh, he's definitely for it. He's one of the.
He's for it, okay.
So
Yeah.
this is the, if you recall, we had brought this issue to you. There was a court case in Leon County in which the court ruled in a bond validation hearing that the PACE providers, because they were created by interlocal agreement, were basically governmental entities, and so they didn't have to honor any of the tax collectors' interlocal agreements.
So
There
they'll have to look at
are
ordinances?
multiple counties now that are in litigation, either the Florida PACE suing them, or Pinellas and a couple of others have sued the PACE providers. There was a bill that was introduced last session to reverse this court case. It got through the Senate, it's my recollection.
Right.
And it got held up in the House, and so it didn't pass. Palm Beach County has said they'll push
They'll be
the
a lead.
legislation. They're moving forward with the legislation. It's just, they want all the
want
counties
everybody
that are
united on this one.
affected to,
So if
I know
you're,
I'm good with it,
yep.
so. I
And some
think
of the
it's
other
just a-
commissioners that aren't here today are good with it, so if you're
Okay.
all good with it,
Rock and roll.
then I will be sending an email to FAC saying Pasco County 2 supports that. Thank you very much, sir.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, sir.
thank you.
All right, anything else?
No, not for
All right,
today.
well, thank you all very much. Thanks for staff for doing everything you did, showing up and giving us a great feedback, and Mike, for you and your team to coordinate this. Great job.
Thank you, sir.
We're adjourned.